our sheriff's letter, the Schmucker sheriff. I emailed it. I didn't have a chance to read it last night. I read it this morning.
Penny, are we on? Penny, are we on? Mm-hmm. Great. All right. Good morning, everyone. This is the November 18, 2022 meeting of the St. Joseph County Election Board. Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Yeah, that's bad because it's not cold in here.
First, we're going to look at the minutes of three meetings that we're catching up on: the October 28th, November 3rd, and November 7th meetings of the Election Board. Does anyone have any additions, corrections, deletions to those minutes?
On the October 28th, 2022, Mark Rolfus's last name is misspelled. There's an E after the F and before the S.
Okay.
That's the only thing I noticed on that one. And I didn't notice any changes on the other two.
All right, may I hear a motion then that we approve the minutes with the exception noted by Tom as to the spelling of Mr. Rolf's name?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor indicate by the sign of aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Those minutes are approved. Next item is write-in ballot tabulation and processing. As Indiana law allows, we received a number of write-in ballots for certain candidates on Election Day, and the process for tabulating them is a little bit different because they have to be the write-in has to be written in some fashion, and those have to come out of the machine and taken and actually looked at before they can be processed. So, do we have a status report on that as to where we are with the write-ins? Either of you guys?
Yes, they were completed last evening
Okay.
at the write-in reports were added, tabulated by Dave and Terry last week for Election Day. He sent me those results and were added last evening. I ran the reports for the walk-in absentee and mail-in absentee and had those added this morning as well.
Okay, and what's the status of those in terms of being actually tabulated or cast? Have they been run through the OVO to be tabulated and added to the totals, or?
So unfortunately, those need to be manually added.
Okay,
So for each precinct, we go in and find the qualified write-in candidate had,
right.
X amount, and then we add that to their name and subtract that from the total of the write-in. So
Okay.
it'll be by precinct order.
All right,
Right.
and is that a process that you do this morning to add it, or have you done, you've done that?
Completed, correct.
All right, and has that been added to the overall vote totals to update them, to include it?
It currently is, yes.
Okay, and could you give me some numbers in terms of just for the record, so we know, for the various races, like the total number of write-ins? I think there weren't a lot of races that had write-ins, but I know that there were some. Could you just give me some overall?
For sure. Do you want them by candidate or?
I think by candidate's probably the easiest
For
way to
sure.
do it, yeah.
Let me just pop a quick report real quick. Okay, so pardon my pronunciations, but Antonio Xavier Alvarez had 0. I'm sorry, this is for U.S. Senator, and
Yeah, if you can announce the race, too, that'd be
specifically
helpful, yep.
just the write-ins for U.S. Senator.
Okay,
Antonio Xavier Alvarez, 0. Thomas Bayer had 1. Philip Beachy had 0. Hanifa Khalik had 16. Danny Niederberger had a total of 38. And David G. Storer had 0.
okay.
The next contest that had qualified write-ins was Secretary of State. Andrew Straw had 0. David Wetterer had 5. Next contest would be the United States Representative 2nd District. This would be the non-special race for that.
All right.
The qualified write-in was Mike Hubbard, and he received 4 votes. The next race would be United States Representative, the 2nd District's, the special election. The only qualified write-in was Marla Gadet, and she received 123 votes. And the last contest that had a qualified write-in was Roseland Town Council at Large. The qualified write-in was Michael Schulk, and he received 31 votes. And that would be it.
That's all of the write-in votes?
Correct.
And this includes this includes Election Day as well as the early voting, either by mail or walk-in early voting?
Confirmed.
All right. Do we need to officially approve that, or is that just for the record?
It'll
Okay.
just be part of your certification
Okay,
when you certify the election.
all right. And certification, I presume, is generated through the system? The certification paperwork that we have to send?
It's just the results, and then you sign them, and then that's certifying it, and then we in the clerk's office have to go into the state system
Okay.
and complete numbers,
And
dates, and things like that, and then that will certify it with the state.
the final result, it comes out, it'll be in the form of a printout that's similar to the ones that we've had in the past, the preliminary and the other ones. All right. Very good.
Like this.
Right. Only that will include, of course, the write-in totals on it as well.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. All right, let's move on to the next item then, provisional ballot left at, what we're going to be doing now is taking a look at a number of provisional ballots, some that are new, some that have had some cures, some that we need to re-review from Election Day, and that'll be over the next 2 or 3 agenda items here. The first one is a provisional ballot left at voters registration on November 14th, and that was brought to our attention by the voter registration staff. And what is the situation on that one? Oh, there are 2 of them? Okay. And could you give us kind of an update on those and which ones those are? Are those
well-
ones we have here?
Yes.
You-
There was one that I found on the front counter, and then I notified Tom, and then I notified Penny and said, hey, what do I do? And then there was another one that we found when we were going through the inspector bags, that I had Eric, who's my Republican, and David, the Democratic deputy, take down to Penny. And those are both of them. Yep, absolutely. She locked it up. The first one with me, and then the other one with David and Eric.
And these contain the provisional ballots.
Well, one was the one that I found that was on the counter that had tape on it that I think you might have just opened. I don't know what, I never opened it and looked inside it.
This one does not have, this one is not sealed.
Is there one that has tape on it?
This one is sealed, but I don't see any tape. Oh, yeah, there's tape right here.
Then that's the one that was originally opened.
It was open,
Yeah, that you told me to seal it.
but yeah, okay.
Gentlemen, if an envelope is open, it can't be counted, it has to be rejected by law.
So on this particular one that is open, I see that this has actually been processed. It looks like it was processed.
That's 11A, we processed this on election day.
So this first one was processed on Election Day. This must be the one, was this the one that was found in the bags? Doesn't seem likely.
Yeah, I would say on the counter, well, no. 'cause the
No,
one on the
he's-
counter
One on
had
the counter.
tape. I don't know how it got back in the bags, because the bags weren't in here.
No.
This one was found on the counter open, and I told Tricia when she brought it to my attention just to seal it, and then we'd look at it today.
But if you guys processed that one, I don't know how it would have got into voter's registration, because bags never came into this room on such a count.
I think this one's already been counted then.
My guess is this has already been counted. We had marked it valid, and there's no ballot in here, which means it probably has been
Can
counted.
you put it with that envelope with the ones that we have to review, re-review? The ones with the ballot sitting on top of them?
Oh, it is, right here.
Yes.
Then I'm gonna open this one.
You can't open it.
It was already open, and I told
I
her to seal it.
understand, but you have to reject it because.
Yeah, I know, I just wanna see if there's even a ballot in there, but we're gonna reject it.
Can't open it.
It was already open. I sealed it just for when we came back.
Yeah, there's a ballot in there. All right, so we have to reject this one. I guess, what do you put as the reason? Yeah, envelope open, yeah.
Unsealed and late.
Was that?
Unsealed and late.
Yeah.
Is that a special handling envelope?
No, it's a provisional.
Okay.
Penny, do you want the mic? Because I've got people saying they can't hear you.
Sure.
All right. Penny, which pile do you want this one in now?
Is that a rejected one?
This is rejected, yes, valid.
And Terry needs to sign, initial it too.
These are the rejected ones.
All right, let's go on to item number 6, which is a review provisional ballot, additional documentation received. On some of these, we have a noon deadline for submission of additional documentation. That is, is this pile here is the additional ones to review?
Those are the ones that have come in since the election. I think there's 3 of the cures that their affidavits were returned on time. 1 military that you need to review and see if it is going to be accepted. And then the gold envelope is later down on our agenda.
Okay. Leave this here. All right. So this is the one that we just looked at when it was left on the counter. And it was marked valid. So, and it has got our initials on it on election day. So the first one, it looks like the ballot had been cast. We don't know how the envelope made it to its other location other than with the other envelopes. But it looks like this one had already been processed. So I don't know that it can, once it has been accepted, I don't know. that it
Right.
can be.
but the ones that came in that were provisional, you have all of the ballots there
Right.
that we have to match back up to those envelopes. So if there is one that is going to be not accepted, then I have to match them all back up. So
Right.
my assumption is, if that does not have a ballot in it, that ballot is laying there with those.
Okay. With these other ones? Okay, so let's keep that one aside. So this one does not have a ballot in it now, I believe.
Right, okay.
Okay, we'll hang on to that. All right, so the next one here. Let's see if we can, this next one is a military ballot. I don't think we need to verify signatures overseas. And it is heavily sealed, it was received November 14th. I think today is a deadline for receipt of these ballots, is that correct?
Correct.
And is there a deadline for postmark?
Postmark doesn't matter, it just had to be in our office by noon today.
All right, so we have this one. So this ballot should be valid. And I don't see a place, I guess we can just note on the bottom that it's valid.
You can now open that one up and lay it to the side, so when we're done with all of these, then they can be added to all of the totals. And that needs to be separated from the envelope when the ballot comes out.
Thank you.
Okay. Let's put the balance here.
Sure.
Face down here. All right, so let's see here. So this goes with this. So this was an issue of signature on the absentee ballot envelope is missing or does not match. So here we have a signature
Yep.
and what are we going to match it to? So on the, on this particular one, Penny, this is a signature match, either a missing or a mismatched signature issue. And on this one, we have the envelope that contains presumably the ballot, but also the original documentation that we are to match this up to. Because we don't have anything to match this to. We have the.
Correct. Your
We have
application-
the affidavit.
Your application is inside. The ballot envelope is inside. So you can take out your application and compare your affidavit and your application. If you agree that it matches, then we put everything back in except the ballot envelope, separate the ballot envelope from the ballot, and stick it in a pile to be counted later.
Got it. All right, so we did have a missing signature then.
Right there.
There's the signature.
It's the same read.
Yep, all right.
Okay, so we're gonna,
So this one is going to be valid.
I'll do the
So we have
separation.
to-
We can write valid on here.
Yep.
Signature match.
Right, so this, on this one, on
Some
this,
signature match after affidavit or something.
yep.
Anytime. Can you put their ballot envelope in their provisional, and
Oh,
then
sure.
all of their stuff is together?
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you. And just so it's on the record, when we are done with the meeting today, I will need to have access to all of these envelopes, so whoever or however you want somebody to come down to my desk so I can enter all of this information into SVRS today.
So do you want me to keep this with the envelope, like this envelope here?
No, those can go into their pile. That one is just into materials that's
Okay.
separated.
Okay.
Did we reject it or accept
We
it?
know we accept.
Okay.
That one I will need to actually go into the voter and say that we accepted their absentee ballot,
Okay.
but it doesn't have to go with the provisional things.
These,
I would keep all the ones that have to be counted in a separate stack.
all right,
This one we said was invalid, right? No, valid, so let's keep it.
so we're gonna keep that one separate, yeah. So, okay, which pile do you want these in?
In the accepted,
Right
because
here.
they're gonna have to be counted.
Yeah, and I have to go into SVRS, into each individual voter, and put that they voted a provisional and that it was accepted.
But it also has to be added to the totals.
Right.
And, let's see, are these the other ones here? This was just, this is a copy, I think, that went with that one, I believe. Does not have a name on it.
Yeah, Enid Alfred.
Oh, it does, okay,
Yeah,
so that
so
goes
it
with,
has
that
it,
that
yeah.
goes with everything, yeah.
Okay.
All right, so here's the next one, these all go together. So here's the affidavit. And what was the issue? Photo's signature missing or does not match, so we need to go in there and take a look. Let's see. Well, let's see if it was missing.
That's this here, that's his
Yeah.
signature on that, and that's that.
But it was missing. Unfortunately,
Yeah,
so-
so we have to
wasn't
compare those two.
rejected, right? Yeah, we can see an LAU, I can see an LAU, it's an electronic signature.
You think so?
I think so. All right, we're going to determine this signature to be valid. Oh, this is good.
Just go back in there.
Okay, so this is a acceptance, so
Accepted.
it goes there, yeah. Okay, so here's the other one.
You initialed it too? Yep.
Oh, did I initial it? Yeah, I did, okay. All right, one more, dispatch. So this is also a signature, missing or does not match. So let's go ahead and do that. This is the copy, all right. What does it look like on there? Oh, she,
That's good.
yes, so that, yeah, that and that, that's fine. ballot out here. This is the-
Those are the good ballots, these are the good envelopes, and this is the military envelope. So you set that over here.
And so we've determined that one to be valid as well. All right, so I think that completes that particular group of provisional ballots for which we received an affidavit to cure the signature because it was either missing or it did not match. Okay, our next item is the re-review of specific provisional ballots on, that we did review on Election Day, but there were some questions about them, so. Which match is that?
The ones with the ballots.
Oh, right here, these ones. So. This is, this is one of
That's
those.
the ones that we already reviewed and
We
accepted.
did, right,
Yeah.
but there was a concern with,
I thought I'd come over this way.
yes, please,
Okay, thank you.
Appreciate it.
I remember doing that accidentally.
Right, right. And so, but we didn't, did we then not mark it down?
Turn it over so we can see if it's completely done first.
So,
So we should have just marked it valid, right?
no, this is an identification. This is an
Oh.
identification.
Proof of ID. That was my, she had to vote a provisional.
Okay.
And we did not receive a cure on this from, yeah, apparently.
Yeah, I've only received a cure for an ID, and it wasn't even an ID, it was additional documentation needed. I have only received one. His copy of his driver's license is in there. If I can approach, I can pull that one out for you guys, because I don't remember his name off the top of my head, but I'll know his name when I come up there.
Okay, yep, come on.
So since she didn't come back within
So we have no,
the timeframe,
we have no affidavit.
we have no, yeah, it needs to be rejected.
Okay.
No information here, so.
And then that's where we have to go with voter registration and just connect all of these bills, but no ID.
Yep, yep.
Like a lawyer.
Who's doing the pushing now?
I can't. I'm getting lazy.
So this one is goes in the rejected pile,
Correct.
which is, where's our
Do we have
rejected
a
pile?
rejected file?
We do now.
These are the certificate of errors that you did
Mhm.
already.
Okay.
You just need to match up
Okay,
the ballots.
and,
With the names and stuff?
and can we can do that via,
There should be.
a precinct
We
number?
may need to go over to voters registration and pull their names.
Okay,
Let's see, yeah, what their ballot should be.
This is the gentleman that returned
oh,
his
with the
additional documentation. So he should be good.
all right, so let's find him and then,
Oh, I don't think, did you open them?
Yeah,
this is one of the ones that, this is one of the ones that.
We already said this guy's valid.
Right.
Yeah.
See, the problem is all of these are here,
Yeah,
all of these are here,
Yeah.
and all of these cannot be accepted.
so we have to go back
So
and
we
kind
have
of,
to,
Match
me,
it.
as
Adjust
in
them.
somebody else and myself or two other people, have to go back to voters registration and match up the precinct number and pray we don't have those numbers.
Okay.
so we need to match this ballot up.
So we just need to
I-
go check Matt.
I just asked for two of our deputies to come in to do that.
Okay, so let's match, let's find this ballot here, so,
Can't. See, first it has to go over to DR to find out what the precinct is.
and that's not on,
It's not on there.
not gonna be on there.
No,
All right.
because, yeah, they don't put it on. So,
So this one we gotta keep aside, because we do have,
because we, yeah, we need to find out his precinct and stuff
right,
so that we can pull his ballot out of here.
all right. So do we just wanna send the envelopes over there to have them mark the precinct on the envelopes?
Yes.
All right,
On all of these?
because we have it,
And those two.
we have names and addresses on these. for the most part, right? Yeah, this is,
Do they have it on here?
don't have addresses. Oh, here it is.
Well, it's an address, but that doesn't tell you. Township Clay.
I write on the top of that one?
That's this the error number.
I think I wrote something on this side. Is that marked already? No.
Marked it valid, but I'm purged in error. Oh, here. 13402. So we
Okay.
need to look for 13402 in here.
Okay.
It'll be the last one.
Usually is. The things you could read upside down, it's not there. 13302.
This is a certificate of error.
Here's, we have,
Errors. We need 7.
okay.
I had a provisional sticker and I had a little stamp to put some on there. Is it right?
Probably, since they already marked it and
this-
signed it valid.
Okay.
Okay.
So valid ones go, those are right here, kind of stacking stuff on top of it, yeah. okay.
But these are ones that haven't been counted yet. This one has been counted,
I
right?
just need this in here so I
Okay.
can go say that
Done.
this is my staff count.
Okay,
This is the county staff.
okay.
But we
To-
need
to be-
have-
to be
we need
counted.
know which ones need to be hand counted.
This one needs to be counted.
No, these do.
You're gonna take these provisional
Are ballots from there? or-
Yes.
Oh, you get their precinct
Right.
number,
Okay, so.
but you need to do it together as a bipartisan.
I'm not sure if it needs to happen with the-
Yeah, you're gonna look up, you're gonna go back to the office, and you're gonna look up the
okay.
voter name
So,
and just get
Okay.
the precinct number, and you guys just need to do it together. So just,
But,
I have, yeah.
but they're marked valid.
Yeah.
I know you guys did. You guys
yeah,
did
do
all
it on a
that.
sticky note. Thank you.
If you flip it over.
Mm-hmm.
These are the two that we need to find. Can you find their precincts for us?
You're gonna see.
well, hang, okay, let's, we've got a stack of them here, so let's
See right here,
do them all together.
the voter was unable or declined to present their proof of identification. We cannot accept it since
Okay.
they have still have not met their identification.
Okay.
So those
But
are.
you guys mark them all as election.
I wonder why.
Let's just go ahead and make a separate notation here, just with today's date. Yeah. Let's go ahead and do it separate with today's date. Oh, you did already, okay, good, good, yeah.
And then we'll just keep trading off. And then we'll just have
Terry,
process for it. I have them go start looking at the.
Right.
And I'll ask you for,
And these are all the same in terms of
those are the IDs.
ID ones.
You need to decide if they could or could not still.
So this is still, right, so these are still to be reviewed, right, we will do that. We will do that. Oh, so this is for you.
Yes,
Right, and Terry, you need to initial,
I did.
oh, did you initial down here? Okay. Oh, so this
I
is,
did.
this is the election day initial, this is today's initial. Okay. All right, and the same thing with this one here. Do this one.
You did an initial too.
I know, this room is usually cold.
The dude.
Change.
Okay,
Yeah,
so we're good with these?
Terry
Terry
needs
needs-
to initial these two.
So I'm going to,
I know,
and
okay.
I'm gonna run these over to VR, so Eric and David can just
Right.
write the precinct number on them.
Okay.
And then
We will
you
review
guys
these ones here.
Review those, and then I'll come back with numbers.
Okay. So these are two that are different, the three that are different, I guess. Let's see.
Voter not included on poll pad and not entitled to vote by
Let's see.
by using fail-safe.
Here's an affidavit. Let's say, does it say why they're not on the program? Do we know?
Oh, we don't know why that,
I mean,
they're-
sometimes,
they're-
some- yeah.
they probably need to go to, VR to be sure that they're not in the
Yeah,
system.
Yeah, VR would, I mean, so VR might, this might be a deceased, somebody marked deceased, it might be.
No, it's probably, it's the person that came in,
Oh, the person came in,
Yeah.
But they could,
but they didn't, their name was not on the poll list, but they're saying that they are registered.
Brian, is he in here?
So that's why they had to vote in provisional.
Brian.
Which
So
we
need to-
accepted.
no, this
You should have
this is just a document.
We accepted it.
You
We did
accepted all of
we
those
did
on
accept it, yeah.
election night, that's what we're correcting.
Mhm.
It needs to go to VR so that
This, yeah,
we can
this one
see
needs to
if
go to
they're.
VR and see what
Okay.
records do you show.
Probably all three of these then?
Yes, all three of those. Well, let's see.
This is,
Is included on the poll list, but the voter does not currently reside in the precinct and is not entitled to vote by completing VRD for a fail-safe.
another one that is, oh, present residence.
Yeah, so that would be a rejection.
It's probably just a rejection straight out. Okay, so that's a rejection. No, I think she only wants,
Well, here's the rejection one.
the rejection's over there, I believe, yeah. Okay.
This one has to go to voter registration. Now this one is,
Brian's back there.
He's not happy. Just
Oh.
you have to- you have to-
Oh, yeah.
well,
Yeah,
I
I would
think we have to
say
reject it, right?
voter issued absentee ballot.
But I think it
Does
was-
not have to
Have it to
not
surrender.
have it to surrender.
Oh, correcting on this thing. It's from election.
Yeah,
Is to say that I lost it, I never received it.
this is the wrong form.
Yeah, so this has to be,
It's
how do
not
we,
really a
how do we,
provisional.
how do we compare
those
this
are the ones
against a
that the
vote
vote
that may have
released
come
there or
in
something else
absentee
that
by
they
this
didn't want
You
person?
can go to, have it
I'm
through
like,
the
I'm
VR
not saying
stack.
if
They
it's
can
good or
see
bad.
the
Those are
absentee
your
case
decisions.
act.
So VR needs to pull those two.
But the ID ones I had to. There's, I couldn't.
That way they know what they're looking for.
Okay.
This one we needed, it's like my best friend,
Who?
Adam.
Oh, yeah.
Those two, all right. Okay. You have two more here to?
Give these to me, yeah.
Well, these-
Gentlemen,
these are
gentlemen,
all
yep, two more.
in this stack here.
I wrote on
think
top of
she
it.
wants Penny. Yeah, if you match them up with Penny, can match them up for us, and we can go ahead and do that. I think she could probably help. Once we get the information, we can go ahead and match.
Brian said he turned on the heat.
I hope so.
Are we waiting on
Chair,
that
you're
info?
gonna start
'Cause
taking
I'm
photos.
gonna direction real quick.
So you're gonna go, is
No, we're not saying it.
All right, let's take a little break here. We're waiting for some information from voter registration that'll allow us to consider some ballots to make a determination on their validity. So let's just take a 5 to 10 minute break. Get some water if you need.
Heat is right. This is making me fall asleep. That's why I got up. There's also gonna, well, you can do other things while Nick has to do the add-ons.
So technically, some people have till noon today to get stuff back, right, by mail, or is it, no?
No, the deadline for getting their cures back was, I think, Wednesday.
Wednesday, but I thought there are some folks who get a ballot in by noon today. Maybe that's military, or did the mail already come in today?
The mail's already in.
Mail's in, so we wouldn't have any more military. What's that? Yeah, I think there,
By an overseas voter.
I saw two deadlines. One was-
Yeah,
one
and
was
a provisional
Wednesday.
ballot because the voter was unable or declined to present a photo ID. Good, how are you? Yeah,
So we have till noon on the,
today,
today for the voter ID.
yeah. But they reckon they're already.
So we need to.
Won't be here till noon, so it'll be all right.
Right.
I think that was, yeah, that was the thought process, we would be here if there was any.
Well, his is an LLC, it's kind of simple.
Mm-hmm.
Hired him, I said, he's hired us in a code section that it was, I had told him that was a shop. I assumed.
Per usual, that's what you guys like it. Just make some money.
There's green in the gray, as we say. Black and white, that's easy.
That's funny.
That's what we did on election night. We just got a printout and all three of us signed it.
Yeah, and make a motion to certify it. No, we didn't do that yet. We haven't done that yet because there are votes that have to be added onto the totals that Nick has now.
Explained this once, and then it's all gone out the other side. So some of this stuff is stuff that we don't need to do.
But he's not even gonna make $6 so he's not gonna make it. And it's gonna be personal.
We marked all those.
Yeah, you marked all these as valid. I think these are just, I think they've already been run through.
What we may have to do is, very balancing. What we may have to do is,
How many provisionals were accepted?
the envelopes, so these are no balancing. I think this is, the one we're doing now is.
7, yeah. 8, 9, the ones you accepted today, they have to hand add into the total. The one you previously accepted, these have all been opened, now we gotta recount, but they've all been opened and the ballots are with the ballots. Not in here. Yes, they've already been counted. Don't worry, Amy, you won't.
Talk about being in your shorts.
Less pressure, less pressure, huh?
16, 18, 20, 24, 25, Joe, 24, 26. Too much coffee. 26.
So this next one coming up is the person who was cancer. And so we have to decide how much information to take. I don't want to get into the weeds in terms of.
41. By my count. Nobody else wants to count them. I had a paper back. You can just announce that. 41 were counted on election night. These are rejected provisionals. I don't know what this one is on the bottom. Invalid envelope found open. Oh, this is the one that we already looked at. Do you want to?
The ones that were counted were, there's.
This is the rejected pile.
Right here, voter registration.
Okay.
Ones left there.
Just for the record, I want to announce that. Those are provisionals accepted. Those are provisionals.
Okay, that's what I was looking for.
Provisional accepted and already counted. What about this one? Yeah, then we have provisionals and they can't. What's that other step?
19,
I think those are, I know they're already prompt, you're going to need to deal with them.
20?
yeah, there's 20 in this stack. These are rejected because
One accepted.
because the envelope was not completely filled out or was filled out wrong. Or they won't, or they were not registered to vote. Here's the, if you want to read it. Chuck.
Do you know what that last stack is, Terry?
I don't know yet, I haven't gotten that far. what did I say?
20,
20.
20 and 41.
So this is 20 rejected ballots that we sent out letters, rejected provisionals, that we sent out letters for. And we're gonna file this.
That's 20?
20. And it tells you on the, in the letter here, if you wanted to read that, why it wasn't counted. That's the list. These are the cure, this is the cure pile that they had to send letters. Yeah, that affidavit too. Yes, you have to, again, all you have to do is.
Penny? Penny? Yes. Come here for a minute. Yes.
So this pile here is all the cures that we have to, that didn't send anything back, correct?
Yes, and did, Nancy didn't get, I called her all these right here.
Oh, these were received after
The
the
ones in
deadline.
the big bag were received after the deadline, these didn't receive any yet. So all of these will need to be rejected.
Okay.
We need to go through and handwrite reject on all of them?
Yes, if you guys want to do that.
Nine.
Yeah, it doesn't really matter to me.
It's simple documentation in the sense that it's just simply admit the absence.
And then I'll give it to you before I leave.
We probably ought to write on every one of them, though, just in case they get separated.
The cleanest way.
So what's this group? These are rejected because,
We had 9 of these before we received the cure after the deadline.
okay.
And then these are going to be rejected because we never received a response at all.
Okay.
So if you want to just start writing the reason on all those.
Yeah, okay. Hey, Penny. So then you want me to,
Yellow's fine.
I suppose hey, Penny, at the end, I'm gonna do them individually. At the end of the day, you want me to put all this stuff in the envelopes, or the envelopes are not open?
Rejected should go in the rejected pile. And I think, yeah, these aren't open, and I think we don't want to open them.
We
right?
just, okay, we'll just leave it just like that, right? We're, okay, I'm gonna do all of these individually so that, just in case they get separated. But you guys will just have to initial, and I'll do this work for it.
If I want to make the record, right? I will. So these are the election day accepted and rejected. These are all accepted. Yeah, these are all accepted. Oh, yeah, so these are. These are all rejected during second round.
So if we can just go through and like count these.
Yep, yep. Right. And then these are all rejected also.
And then if we can.
Yes. Right.
I don't need to do anything with these.
So this is another 21.
Another 21 because no affidavit was sent back.
So basically no response.
No response, no cure. As they say.
And then we also have other rejected, I think all the ways down there, those two are rejected. And then these are valid. These are okay. There's 5 accepted. That's the one we have not decided yet. Right. We have it next on the agenda, yeah. Okay, so accepted, we have 41 here, plus 5 here. The military one is accepted also, right, so that's one more. Well, it's not a,
But you can put that in the count.
it's just the overall, the kind of late acceptance, right, got it. And then,
Starting to feel it's cooler.
okay, so am I getting all the piles here? So we have 20 plus, okay, rejected, 20 plus 21 plus 2 plus, how many do we have here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 9.
As soon as these guys put their initials right here.
No, these guys.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
sure,
these
sure,
and these, right.
yeah.
Right. 9. Right, so this is 647 accepted.
So these ones require your signatures just on the initials right here.
Rejected. I can. I'll just go ahead and do these here. Just scan through. Oops. Tom, I need your signature. Okay. Are we ready? Do we want to wait for Penny to match those up?
Oh, okay.
Just give her a minute or two.
Hey, my pen was reserved.
Got a match? Okay. These are ones, we have not, we have these ones. This one. Right. Yeah.
I realized that the ID, but I don't know that.
So it got counted. So it got counted probably.
But we don't, so it's not
So
here
it
either.
got counted in.
So this have already been counted, but we already marked it that way.
Yeah. Do we even know who they are by their? I mean, I don't think we can do anything with them. For the record, 99% of them are Republican votes. I don't think we can do anything with them.
So what do we need to do with these ones now? These? Okay. Oh, so these are ones to be, so these have not been counted yet. Right. So if it's valid, yeah.
If it's valid, put the ballot here.
Okay. So let me ask about this. So this is, well, let's ask about these ones, some of these ones here. So this is somebody who was merged with their twin. I remember this is.
Oh, yeah, Gabrielle and Gabriella. Come on, George Foreman has 7 boys named George Foreman.
Same address, same.
All right, yeah, yep. Yep. All right, we're going to go back on the record in terms of counting votes, but we're not going to do anything that you're going to hear much of because we're going to be looking at individual cure affidavits and so on. So it'll be still a few minutes before we get back. So you can keep your disorganized state and talk with each other, but at some point we'll get back to actually doing business. But just try to keep it down a little bit as we're going through these. Thank you. All right. So this one, this is merged with twin, and so there are 2.
They were registered at this address, but then the precinct number. So that, I'm not sure how that works.
It's because they were,
Because they were merged together.
Was it merged, so they're registered at the wrong one in the 130302?
the one who voted was at precinct number, so the one who voted should have been at that precinct number. But they were merged with their cousin who was at the other precinct number.
Twin.
Yeah.
Twin, no, twin, sorry.
So we've already, but has this been counted?
No, no, that's why it
Yeah.
should go here, ballot needs to go here,
Seems
and
like,
here.
yeah, I think it's fine. I think it's fine. Let's go ahead and, yeah, so we've marked that valid. We'll keep it valid.
Put that on the record.
That's valid. Okay, so, well,
We already did.
actually,
Some people can,
Oh, that you're gonna accept.
that you're gonna accept.
all right. I don't want to do it by voter name. I can just do it by.
You don't have to do it by
right,
voter
okay,
name.
all right.
Still tell people you're.
So we're accepting one additional ballot where we had a situation where a voter was canceled because she was registered with her twin at the same address and inadvertently canceled in the voter registration system. We have marked that ballot as valid. So we got here. It's marked valid. And
Different precincts.
Because I almost said Rita, because I'm just so used to Rita being here.
That's okay.
now is this,
And I'm hopped up on cold medicine.
I've been called worse.
Again, their information was incorrect, that's why they voted a provisional.
Right.
So,
People do that to us all the time.
Because there was
think of
2
you guys as
different
the same
numbers, one was on here, and
we're pretty
one was
much-
in voters registration system.
Join
They
by the
wrote
hip.
both of them down for us, David and Eric, so we could make sure that we got the
right person, right.
right ballot.
Right. And so would this, why would this one be invalid if they,
They had 2 addresses.
but if they, yeah,
This day,
so present residence is on Sycamore Road.
Not included in the poll list, is what it says.
so they weren't on the poll list, so,
At all.
and there was
This matches with
This, but this says registered at. It says that they were registered, even though it says not on the poll list here. This says not on the poll list, but this one says they were on the poll list. But now we have a different,
So
So they just
different
marked the
precincts.
wrong box.
That could be, they just marked the wrong box up here in terms of the reason, and then the voter went ahead and filled out the,
If the envelope's not, yeah, the envelope has to be correct.
the envelope has to be correct.
Yes.
Even as it
yes.
relates to.
There are no evens.
If the ballot
Let me see.
or the envelope is wrong,
There are no evens.
Well, there's nothing on there to account for,
And they're all listed.
it
I don't
being
have
at
them
a
all
different
written down.
address. So, yes, it's fine.
Amanda brought some.
I think we are.
I got it.
I think we have to reject it.
yeah, no, I was talking to Trish.
Where do they have a place on this thing that says they're registered at a different precinct?
I don't think there is.
They should have voter's registration and a certificate of error if one of these two boxes happened. And they didn't. So the inspector said to me, they needed to do so.
What box would they have checked if they did a certificate of error?
It sounds like
Two
there's,
boxes right here, she checked it, or he checked it, whatever their was. But they didn't call voter's registration to do a certificate of error.
So if there were a certificate of error in here, this would be the correct box to check.
Pull up my sleeve.
So where's this one go? Inside?
and then, but then this one will be, we'll have to. Well, it's not in at all. Right, okay, so this one, but we have to mark it, we have to mark it. We have to add a new. It doesn't make it easy to vote for a lot of people.
And then Terry.
Jerry, oh, Jerry, no. Jerry. All right, so this is rejected. Okay, so I'm gonna add one to my, sorry. Add one here, okay. And we have
That's
one-
this one too.
And we had one accepted there too, so one more accepted. Okay, is this the same situation in terms of?
No, this is the one where she didn't present ID.
Oh, no, I didn't.
Voter issued, absentee ballot, right?
Oh, and she didn't.
No surrender.
But
So
can't you also say, maybe an affidavit that you don't have it, that you didn't receive it?
Yes.
And is that what she did here?
They made her vote a provisional, they
Oh,
They didn't need to make her vote a provisional.
Right. Because she could have just said, I lost,
Affidavit in it.
just said I lost my
So
ballot.
this one, my opinion,
Yeah.
just say, this one should go. The inspector did the wrong process. He should have just been given the affidavit to sign and then sent to the machine and through the ODL.
The inspector did the wrong process on that one too, and it's rejected.
The inspector did not fill out the proper paperwork on that one. This one, they did the complete. They didn't need to do a provisional at all.
So how are we able to confirm that this person didn't vote twice? That they didn't actually send in an absentee ballot on the same day? If they would have sent it in, what's the last day that you can accept an absentee ballot?
Or they can go to the polls and say, I did not receive my absentee ballot, or now I wish to vote
But I
person.
can go
Which is what this person did.
Yeah, which is what that person did.
But how do we, yeah,
Lana?
Yeah, please do.
I
Why
can go
don't you
look
double,
and see
let's just double
if they have
check.
an absentee or not.
Let's just double check that.
Do you want me to look on ePulse, Penny? Do you want me to look on ePulse?
Yeah.
What's the name?
Yeah, so we did reject this one.
Eber, E-B-E.
Yeah, that was the issue up here. Yes, we've already rejected this. so I guess.
So why was,
She just put them all together so we could process them. Right, so that's one more rejected.
They didn't check it.
No. Oh, yeah, that's the one.
That's the, no proof of ID. It's rejected. Okay. Okay, so she did not vote absent. So then I'm okay then.
She did not vote in person, she did that in person.
So we can accept her, and that's accepted, right, okay. That, and we just put the one that we had rejected previously, no proof of ID, no proof of ID. This is one that we looked at already, and it was proof of ID, okay. So this is rejected.
wow, 2 initials, look at that.
Double check.
You know,
Either
the
that or
ones,
somebody
the
ought to
two
change
people
the
who
law.
were the one who signed the most, were both, one was a Democrat, one was a Republican, and then, so there was this, it was an equal opportunity error.
That's what she's saying.
So we already did this one today, so this is a rejection also. So we got 2 more rejections here.
Oh, except for you. Five is, yeah, five is perfect.
P6.
What's this one? These are that we don't know?
So,
We can't, everyone knows who they are.
E-Day, 7 today.
I mean, these were all provisions anyway, weren't they?
They were, and then the inspectors had put the sticker on them like they were supposed to.
Okay. All right. We're good. All right. Let's take a look at this one then. I have 4 that we just did just now, and then I think there were 2 more from
Next time around.
okay, well, okay, I'm not sure I got that exactly, but so I can tell people these are our approximate numbers. 8 accepted. I have 7 accepted. You think it's 8, it's actually 8, okay, all right. Let me do that 8, so that'll be 9. And this is 15.
Hey, Penny? The one I gave you was 2-sided, so this is just every other side.
The one back.
So this is the very last one, right, and this is the very last one, which we may or may not hand count, depending on how we go with this, okay. So,
How many hand counts do we have? 6 or something?
I was saving paper.
That's why I have to step out at 12 o'clock and my dad calls me.
Hopefully we'll be done. Hopefully we'll be done by then.
hopefully. So, let's get to this one. So this is the one, this is the one that's, all canceled. All right, let's go on there.
Okay.
Okay. All right, we're going to look at one more. We've gone ahead with the processing of the almost all of the, except for one, of the provisional ballots, and we've done some acceptance and rejection. We have some numbers if folks want to know those. This does not include this last one that we're going to be dealing with, but if you're interested. First of all, there were a number of provisional ballots that were either accepted or rejected on Election Day itself as part of the overall processing. And some of that was just things straight out that were clear to both of us, to the board. On Election Day itself, we had 20 provisional ballots that were rejected and 41 that were accepted on Election Day itself. When we go ahead and add in today's number, again, not including this one that we have to deal with, which is a little bit more complicated, we have a total of 49 accepted, so an additional 8, I'm sorry, that's not quite right. Yes, I'm sorry, an additional 8 for today, and that adds to the 41 on Election Day. So we have a total of 49 provisional ballots that were accepted between Election Day and today. For the ones that were rejected, there were 45 today that were rejected, and that adds to the, I'm sorry, that's 30, that should be 35. 35. 35 that were rejected today. That is in addition to the 20 that were rejected on Election Day. The reasons for rejection typically had to do with the failure of a voter to provide cure information or to provide it in a timely manner. So, for example, if a voter came in without an ID, the voter had until, I believe it was midday on Wednesday to provide information, to provide a copy of the ID or to bring it in and show it. Some of them had to do with missing signatures on ballot envelopes when the ballots came back. The voters, again, were given until noon on Wednesday to submit a signature, which we could then match up in the voter registration system. And when we had those, we could determine, and some of those, of course, the cures were submitted and they were accepted. Some of them, the cures either were not sent in on time or they were not sent in at all. There was no response to the letters that went out to those voters. So those were rejected. Those are the main reasons. There were a few other miscellaneous ones, but those are the main ones.
Just so I'm clear, out of those 49 accepted provisionals, 41 have already been counted, right?
Yes, those 41 have already been counted on Election Day. So the election days. So the only new ballots that we're accepting today are an additional 8 ballots to be counted in the system.
And possibly a 9th, which is the next issue we're taking up.
All right, let's take a look at this one ballot. Let's open it up. Ooh, a lot of tape here. Wish we had our.
When you get mad at that, remember, it was you.
That was me, yeah. Born in Fort Knox.
This is the sealed up.
Same thing. Here, I'll do that this time.
Okay.
Oh, sure.
You've done your. For the record, I was the designated envelope opener on election night.
And he did a fine job.
All right, there we go.
All right, so this last one had to do with a voter who came in to vote on, I believe it was November 7th, into the early voting downstairs, I believe it was. Is that downstairs, and was found to be not in the system. Upon a review of the records, it looked like her registration was canceled, And that's a different status than either being not registered or being registered incorrectly in some other status. One of our clerks went ahead and one of our voter registration officials went ahead and looked at the information and changed it from inactive to active.
No, that's not correct.
Sorry.
She was not registered. She was canceled out, and she called in to get registered the day before the election. And she was transferred to one of the voter registration clerks who registered her, and then she went down and voted.
Well, let me correct that also, in that it appears to me that she did not register on the day before, that she had been registered, she was in the system, but she was designated as a canceled registration. And that is significant because of the way that Indiana law and the Indiana Election Division deals with canceled voters. There is a fail-safe provision for voters who are canceled. So my understanding is the documentation for this voter shows that cancellation is usually for long periods of inactivity or some other issue, that she in fact voted in the 2020 general election, in the 2019 municipal election, and also the 2019 municipal primary, in the 2018 general election, 2016 general election, 2012 general election, 2011 municipal election, 2010 general election, and it looks like other elections and primaries going back to 1984. So she had been a regular voter. The issue was whether she should have been canceled. It was done by an individual who is no longer, my understanding is, an individual who is no longer in the voter registration office at this time. It was done in February of 2022.
Correct.
Okay, and is there any documentation in the system as to why the cancellation was done?
Yes, it looks like a deputy in December of 2020 was filling out a VRG 412 and was missing information.
Is it clear why a 412 was needed?
Yeah, because it says that she was missing her driver's license, Social Security, her voter ID. And she was sent a disposition
And this was in 2019,
2020.
2020?
So she received, I shouldn't say received, she was sent a disposition on 12/30 of 2020. It came back because, and it says here, which is time-stamped and everything from the mail, 12/30 of 2020. It's incomplete. She has a different address, so her disposition in it that says, the following information was incomplete or missing from your application: the driver's license number or the last four digits of your Social Security. She was sent this on 12/30 of 2020. It came back. They sent another disposition because it looks like Mohammed went in and canceled her because they had heard nothing from her. And he had put that.
Who did that?
Mohammed Shabazz, which is a Democratic board member at the time. So he canceled her because she had never responded.
Can we take a look at the envelope in the paperwork there, please?
And this is the notice that Mohammed had sent when he canceled her. Here's the one from 12/30.
while that disposition was in there, there is no VRG 412 scanned into her record, so there's no way to prove that she actually completed one. And she indicated that her address was the same when I spoke to her on the phone.
On this one, the personal information, the NVRA tracking ID is a VRG 412.
So how, this particular document, how are you reading this, this particular one? Why don't you explain it to us?
This is her voter overview. This is her information, personal information for the tracking number is a VRG 412. This is her information. Here's her address. There's the mailing, date received. So this is the VRG 412 that she filled out when she came to vote in person in 2020.
2020.
Correct. And it was marked incomplete.
And what's incomplete about it, do we know?
Yes, she was missing her driver's license or the last four of her social. She was missing the required information that you have in order to update her information.
Okay.
Because this is the first one, and this is the second one that Mohammed sent
And
as
this is
well.
this is in December of 2020.
Correct.
The second notice went out.
These are
That's the
only
first.
documents that are in her registration. The correspondence is that envelope, and the only other document that's in there is her VRG from 2008. So there is no VRG 412 in her documents to prove that she filled one out and that that was done correctly.
There is, because it says right here, it was a VRG 412. The only problem is the deputy at the time did not scan it in, nor, who was a Republican, and the Democrat board member did not do anything as well.
Where's the document?
Well, I think we're getting ahead of ourselves here. This came to our attention on the 7th of November, the day before the election, when this woman had called into voter registration asking to be registered. And Tricia received the call, and the woman demanded to speak with the Democrat in voter registration. So Tricia passed her on to Amanda, and then she was re-registered and voted. And we've got two separate things going on here. We've got whether she had a right to vote, three separate things: whether she had a right to vote, what she needed to do to assert that right to vote, and whether there was inappropriate behavior in re-registering her. The third of those is the issue that we're going to take up in a hearing, and it seems like we're starting to address those things today, when what we really ought to be doing is saying, did this woman follow the proper procedures to vote? And if she did not, then the question is whether her vote should be counted. We have lots of votes that got rejected, even though the voters followed all the proper procedures, but somebody in the system, a poll worker, failed to initialize a document, and unfortunately those votes by state law cannot be counted. All of those votes, unlike this one, when we rejected them, we had no notion at all of any political affiliation or the voter's vote. This one is unique because the woman specifically identified the desire to speak with the Democrat, and then she got registered and she voted.
For the record, we have people that call all the time to speak to one party or the other. That is why our office is bipartisan, so that someone can call and speak to a Republican, which just happened the other day, or they can call and speak to a Democrat.
What I'd like to do is to reference the publication from the Indiana Election Division, which is the state of Indiana's guidance to all counties, all election boards throughout the state. It's the 2022 Indiana Voter Registration Guidebook. And there's a provision in here specifically, it's at page 55. It deals with fail-safe procedures. And this is under the general category of fail-safe procedures where the voter's name does not appear on the poll list, which is what happened here. And then there's a category called canceled voter. And this is not the same as a voter who is not in the system at all. This is a voter who has specifically been canceled, that voter registration has taken an action to take them off the poll list. So this is a situation where it says the voter's name is not on the poll list, but the county has a record of the voter at the address the voter claims to now live, but the record shows the registration has been canceled. The statement in the following paragraph is, this voter must be allowed to vote in the precinct if the voter goes through, either makes an affirmation or makes a statement, even an oral statement, that the voter in fact does live at the place that's in the precinct.
Makes the statement to who and when?
It doesn't say.
Doesn't say it at the precinct when they're voting?
That deals with Election Day. The problem is this is the day before. And so, again, we went down and asked guidance from downstate, from the Indiana Election Division. And the one statement was that when a person it's fairly clear when a person is voting on Election Day that they need to make that statement or affirmation, or, again, it can be oral, or they can, in fact, but it's not clear what happens if it is an early vote, if they come in to vote early. So that is part of the issue here that we have to deal with one way or the other. Tom is correct in that there are many ways that a voter's vote can be nullified by an error of the clerks. Or I don't mean the clerk's office necessarily, but I mean those who are processing on Election Day, who are processing voters on Election Day. For example, all ballots must have two initials, the Republican clerk and the Democratic clerk, or maybe it's the judge, I can't remember, who needs to, before the ballot can be processed. If those initials are not both there, the law says the ballot must be rejected. This includes mail-in ballots. So a mail-in ballot can go out with only one initial on it, which means it's an invalid ballot to start with. A voter can mark that, can get it in on time. We look at it, and we did that on Election Day, and in fact, the vote is thrown out. And we threw out, I would say, dozens.
Yeah,
Dozens.
probably 50 or 60.
Maybe 50 or 60 on Election Day. Penny says 34? 40? 43. Penny says 43. So that is, again, part of the way that the voting system is designed, in that voters who are completely open and can go ahead and cast their ballot can have the ballot rejected for absolutely no reason of their own. This is an issue, by the way, in other states. I know that on the East Coast, the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Third Circuit has dealt with this issue and has said very specifically that a vote cannot be invalidated for an error that does not relate to the voter's qualifications, but an error that is made by a poll clerk. So it's a very difficult issue, and as you can see from our sorting up here, we're making a lot of decisions based on information that we have and doing it very quickly with respect to these particular individuals. So this is the issue here, of course, whether a canceled voter, and I don't want to say a re-registered voter because she was not re-registered, in my opinion. She was canceled, and then the cancellation was changed from a canceled voter to an active voter. So that's the issue, and it's another issue we'll deal with later as it relates to the procedures for that. But the issue that we have right now is whether a canceled voter has the right to vote. My concern, of course, is to follow what the Indiana Election Division suggests that we should do, and they use the language "must be allowed to vote." The problem is that we don't have good evidence one way or the other as it relates to her statement or affirmation. That's my concern. as to her residence. We do have some documentation here that shows a couple of different residences. Let me check these out here. What do we have? We have Brookfield, I think we have Kenwood Avenue.
Yeah, and my biggest concern is we don't have her, at the time she's casting her vote, doing this affirmation. And that's the part that ties it to the must be counted if they do this. We don't have any evidence that she complied with that.
All right, you want to make a motion?
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna vote on this one, so I'm gonna vote that this ballot not be counted because we don't have any evidence that she followed the requirements for the affirmation in order to allow a canceled vote to be counted.
And second?
Second.
Second. My position is on this, I am also concerned about that last little piece that has to do with the statement of her current residence. And it's one of those traps, I guess, that voters fall into. And certainly, since we're down to the very last vote and no races here are only separated by one vote, it's not going to affect the outcome, but that's not the issue. The issue is whether this person who wanted to cast her vote, in fact, would be able to do so. But because we do not have in the record any statement of that affirmation, I don't think we can accept it either. So the motion then is, as it relates to this canceled voter, and I think it's important to document the fact that that was her status. This particular canceled voter did not take the second step of making the statement or affirmation that we have documented in the record as to her address. And so let's go ahead and vote on the motion.
So, yeah, we're voting to say aye means to reject the ballot, so I say aye.
Aye.
And aye. All right, motion carries. This will be considered a rejected ballot.
Just right here?
Rejected, yep.
Okay.
All right, so let's keep all this stuff together here.
Yeah, see, I want to make sure that we get copies of all of this stuff, so.
Yeah.
You've got
And I've got some
she's
copies that,
stuff.
I have some copies that you didn't have, and you had copies I didn't have.
I didn't have anything, those were hers.
All right, so let's put this here.
We'll put this here, and then we'll make copies of this.
Do you need copies for later in the meeting?
No,
No.
just
Okay.
for our own individual records. So this all goes together, huh? At least this
This
is,
one we can probably throw out now. It was just a
okay.
Will you just put it in one of the boxes, and then we'll just put it with the materials, and
Here, let's put
that
it all
way.
together here. Yeah, thank you.
That one we want after the meeting, Terry, we want to make sure we get copies of all of that. so.
Here, I'll make copies. Just do 2 sets.
Yeah. Set for each of us, be good.
Thank you.
All right. Our next item here is the processing and certification of approved ballots. So we have ballots here that we have accepted, and there are, I believe, 6. We have 6 ballots. Can we process those, please, for our totals?
Usually we have a Republican and a Democrat go with Nick to be sure that they're done correctly.
He's set up right here, so if they just want to come and read with him.
Yeah, we have David and Eric ready to do that, so we just need to let them know.
All right, 6. Right.
I thought there was 2, but I don't know
Can we move on while we're processing?
Well, once they run them.
Didn't he have to hand, are those provisionals?
He has to hand add them, yes,
Oh.
into the totals.
Those 6 have to be hand added in manually? Okay. So you can go ahead and do that then, and then tell us when you're done. Oh, you can't do that here. You can only print here. I'm sorry. You can't scan. All right.
For 6 of them, I could maybe do it quickly, but if you want to proceed, I could take it elsewhere.
I think we can go ahead and proceed, and once you come back and just tell us when you're done, and we'll get back in with the totals and everything. And then, but you have to go with the ballots
They're over there.
in
in
a voter registration. Okay.
I can go get them so they can come and go.
Okay. Yep. Let's do that.
We have our machine techs that are Republican and Democrat. Can they just walk?
They
over to
can accompany Nick over there. Yep.
Thank you, guys. Nick, do you need help carrying the equipment over? Okay.
Thank you very much.
That's what Keith is here for.
Penny was going to volunteer me to help you out, Nick.
That's what Nick's boss is here for.
Hey, the card is over there.
Thanks.
It's right there.
Okay.
All right, so we're going to move along here on the agenda, and then we'll get back to the certification once we have those totals and the finals. The next item, and these have to do with complaints that were made during the campaign having to do with disclaimers on signs. Under Indiana law, any advertising by a candidate needs to state who paid for the advertising. The first one was Deborah Watts. She, in fact, as I recall, had regular yard signs that, in fact, did have the disclaimer on those yard signs. But there was also one very large sign that was, I think, unknown to her at first, as I recall. At least that's my understanding. And Tricia, do you know more about that?
Yes, it's on, looks like particle board, and it's on a commercial piece of property. And she said she wasn't aware of it, but he is also he donated to her election for signs and everything. And so, but he's also in Florida as well. So,
Okay, so we have, is she here today, Deborah Watts? No, okay, so I think on this particular one, I guess I would like to hear from council. My understanding is that this is a sign that has been put up, even though it's somebody who is kind of connected in the sense that he made a donation to her campaign. He's not certainly I don't believe on the campaign committee, or not part, as far as I know, is not involved directly, but in fact put up a very large hand-painted sign with her name on it, but no disclaimer. And the question is, does the candidate have any responsibility for something someone else puts up, or is it kind of a strict liability issue that any campaign advertising, in fact, is the candidate is responsible for that?
Give me a few minutes to pull up the statute here real quick, and I'll let you know.
Okay, I think that'd be helpful.
It comes to us on good information that whether or not he's connected to the campaign, he was their father-in-law, so there was obviously. So, I mean, to me, the issue is less about, connected to the campaign I can understand, but even not, it's really a matter of what efforts are made to correct that once it's brought to our attention.
Yeah, and I think because Ms. Watts is not here, I do think that, and we have this issue that we need to hear from council on. I do think that we probably need, the question here is, we have already made a finding at a previous meeting that for this particular sign, and also for the signs of Mr. Goebel, Hudnall, and Dobson, which is the next item on the agenda, we're not in compliance. There was, in fact, a late added disclaimer on their sign. These are the three other individuals, but it was one of those drive-by signs, and it was a very small, to the point. So we've made determinations that the signs were not in compliance. I do think, and we have the ability to impose a fine as a result of that. I don't know, are Mr. Goebel, Hudnall, or Dobson here today? See, I don't believe we've given notice to anybody in terms of final disposition, and I think it's appropriate that we in fact let folks know before we actually impose anything.
Yeah,
If we
I
think
mean,
it's,
so when this stuff comes up, you become much more aware of it, you know, on the election board. And it's like, I drive home on Day Road every day, and even the signs that quote-unquote comply with the statute as yard signs, they're set out right on the road. The only people who can see them are people who are traveling by. And now, you know, Batman couldn't see the disclaimers, even if you stopped and looked at them, and yet those signs are in compliance. So my perspective on that is when something's not in compliance, if we bring it to their attention and they make an effort to bring it into compliance, and I know with these other three guys that they didn't own the sign, and when we said the compliance is a little too small, can you make it bigger? The guy who had the signs was out of town until the day before election. So I would, on all of these ones, and they span the political spectrum, by the way, as candidates, I would move at this particular election that we not impose any kind of a sanction on them, because all of them did respond to our request to at least attempt to remedy the problem.
I don't know, what was the response of Deborah Watts, so, as to.
She sent us an email where she had gone out there and posted a disclaimer on there that was the same as her disclaimer on her normal signs. And it was taped up there, and you know, when you were standing right next to it, you could read it, which is the same thing as the Hudnall signs if you were standing right next to them, you know, on a busy street, just like if you're standing right next to the ones. That's why I brought up the Day Road one. There's no pedestrian traffic in that section of Day Road. But if somebody were brave enough to stand out there and look at the signs, then they could read them. But other than that, they wouldn't be able to see the disclaimers.
Right. My concern is that, you know, the disclaimer law is, candidates know this or should know this just by reason of the fact that candidates have guidance from the Indiana Election Division. There's a candidate's manual, which is very detailed, and it has all these rules in it. And so to the extent that these rules are ignored, you end up having a situation where it's, the presumption is, well, this isn't really very important, and we don't, and then you have a greater level of non-compliance with it. And so I'm concerned that if we don't have some kind of a statement as it relates to this, just to say, well, you tried after the fact. I don't know. On Ms. Watts, it's a little bit of a different situation, and I know we're getting information kind of second and third hand about relationships, you know, and so on. But
I just want to clarify, though, the gentleman that did this is my husband's stepfather, so it's my father-in-law that did this for Deborah Watts.
okay.
My stepfather-in-law, yes. It's
Not
my
hers.
husband. No.
Oh, okay, I misunderstood that.
Okay. So, but still, you know, to the extent that there in fact has been some attempt at compliance, I think that's good. On the other hand, I don't want this to be just dismissed out of hand when there is in fact non-compliance. And I think what we need to do is to have some kind of documentation in the record that in fact the finding was made as for non-compliance. My sense, at least as it relates to Mr. Goebel, Hudnall, and Dobson, was that the attempt was a little bit half-hearted in the sense that it was a very small, very small disclaimer that really was unreadable from going by. And I think we need to document that in a letter to these candidates, and also for purposes of, to the extent that this comes around again, maybe it's 4 years from now, and that there needs to be a letter in the record that relates to that non-compliance.
I agree with that, but I want to make this record clear with regard to those three gentlemen that I reached out when the complaint first came in. I reached out to Mr. Goebel, and that's when he attempted compliance, and then came to our meeting, and then we had a discussion at the meeting as to whether or not the size of the writing size was legitimate, and his understanding after the meeting, or legible, not legitimate, his understanding after the meeting is that we were going to get back in touch with him and give him some proportions as to the size of the disclaimer versus the size of the regular signage, and that didn't happen because that was just us having a discussion and it wasn't something that we ruled on, but that's what they were waiting for when the next kind of came in saying, hey, we can't read this, it's not complied with.
Right. Well, I understand that record is there, but at the same time, since we did make a determination of noncompliance, we need, I think, in fact, to document that.
Sure.
And to tell them, and the responsibility needs to be on them. There really is no guidance, unfortunately. This, again, has to do with the way that the statute is written. It just says that there shall be a disclaimer of sufficient size to be readable. And that can mean something different when it's a yard sign and you're walking down the street, and a billboard when you're driving past, or some of these other hybrid types of signs, both of which is what we're dealing with here. So I do think we need to make a record, and we need to go ahead and get correspondence out to them. I will draft a letter, and what I want to do is set this over then to, we're talking about doing a couple of additional meetings in December to kind of do cleanup issues as it relates to the election here by the end of the year. And so we can go ahead and let them know if they want to show up to, that the hearing will be continued to that point. But that's my sense as to what ought to be done here. So we haven't set a date for the next our next hearing, but let's go ahead and we'll go ahead and take care of that down near the end, but of the agenda. But let's go ahead for today then and set these both over to our next hearing for disposition. And I would make a motion to that effect.
Second.
Okay. Thank you. All right. All in favor indicate by the sign of aye.
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 All right. Disposition at the next meeting. All right, there's we are obligated, the Indiana Elections Division is kind enough to publish a calendar of everything that we need to do with every deadline. It's a 40-some-odd page booklet. No, it's more than that. But it's a fairly lengthy booklet of every deadline that every election board and I'm sorry, it's a 101-page booklet. Every election board and and the election division needs to meet throughout the course of the year. And one of the deadlines for today, it says the deadline for today for the county election board to discuss and publish a document that complies with the following information for each precinct. And it's a state form PRE 16. And Dave, I believe isn't that some of the information that you have provided to us in your report, which we'll get to a little bit later? I don't know if I'm...
Yeah, that is.
I'm folding this stuff all together. So why don't we deal with that then under your report when we get down to it? Okay. Yeah, to deal with... Oh, that's right, yeah, we can do that. These will go quickly here. Okay, next item is Election Day feedback, calls and reports. We've received a number of emails, letters, phone calls from both voters, from poll workers, and others about the process on Election Day. Some individuals were concerned about the process at the polls. There was some concern about electioneering. There were a whole variety of concerns. What I would like to do is to kind of, I don't think we can act or respond to all of those now, but I think they're all useful to us to take seriously and to make some determination as to whether this can help us change our procedures. So I think what I would like to do is to get all of those together and to collate them in ways, to break them down by category and the types of complaints. I think that would be a helpful way of kind of dealing with this generally. That way, going into next year's election cycle, we'll be able to have a sense as to what are the kinds of things we just need to be more conscious of and more aware of going forward. So this is just kind of letting everybody know that we need to do that.
Chuck, the ones that came into the clerk's office, you do have a packet,
Yes, we do.
and so that is
And-
what we have been given.
Okay, and I know we got another one just today, and I know there's some emails too.
Those are
I don't
in
know.
there also.
Those are in there, the ones that came to the clerk's office. I don't know if you and I got any individually, we may have.
Yeah,
But-
the one I got was the one that I forwarded to everybody.
Was it the longer one?
Yeah, it was from the sheriff out
It's
at
in there.
the middle school.
It's in
All
that
right.
packet that you have.
All right,
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think I was the first one to get it. I don't know if there's other people copied on it, or if it was just sent to me. But then I forwarded it to everybody else, I thought, in the group.
Yep.
Okay.
It's in your packet.
all right. So let's go ahead and let's just go ahead and I'll take a look at them, and we can perhaps collate them by category and see if there's any patterns that we're taking a look at that'll make us kind of improve our processes next time if possible.
I also, in my report, the last part of my report has to do with some of those things.
Right. I think
Because
I
I'm
did see
in
that.
contact with people from every vote center all day long.
Right, so that would be helpful to integrate, Dave, what you gave us, along with some of the other
Right.
complaints that we got from others on the outside, so that would be helpful. All right, next item is campaign finance delinquency notices. There's a deadline of Monday, I believe, for the board to send out campaign finance delinquency notices to persons who have failed to file a pre-general election campaign finance report. And is that scheduled to take place through the clerk's office? Do we know?
I have not had time to do those letters or to even see who filed theirs delinquent. Unfortunately, I'm not here after today,
Right,
so,
understand.
a couple of meetings ago, I asked you if you guys wanted the reports to see who had what,
Well,
and
yeah,
I was told no.
I don't know that we need the reports themselves. This is a requirement that these letters go out. And Terry, do we have somebody who can?
I'm sure we can find somebody to do that, yes.
All right. So let's go ahead and get those out. It doesn't say, I don't see any guidance here as to, other than that we send notices, what action. Okay. And if you could send us both a copy of those letters so we know who they went to, that'd be helpful. And then we can decide at a later meeting what, if anything, to do about that. All right. Next, reports generally. Voter registration, anything new from either of you? Okay. Next, we're going to have tech report. Dave, before we get into that, I know sometimes you've got a fair amount of detail. I know that Terry needed to step out briefly and take a phone call.
It hasn't happened yet.
Oh, okay. Did you mind going, you just want to step out then when that happens?
I'll just step out.
Okay, all right. Well, Dave, let's go ahead and go forward then. Thank you.
Yeah, I emailed you copies of the report, and in some cases, part of them are in color and don't copy that well, but it's really 4 reports. I just combined them all together. The first couple pages are a machine equipment report. The next couple of pages are a vote center setup report. And then there's about the vote center tech program and the number of vote center techs we had. And the last part is other issues, because there are things that came up that I just wanted to call to everyone's attention. Looking at the machine equipment report, this is just a summary of the physical equipment, what was used, what failed, what worked well under OVOs. There were 84 of them distributed to the 42 centers. One was a spare, 3 of those spares were put in service for various reasons. One of them, the only one that failed, was the one at IBEW, and there appears to have been something caught in a roller that then overheated, and that one was taken out of service and the spare put in service. The results and flash drive from that one were completed, so it was just as if they had used it on election day. 2 other sites, I believe it was O'Brien and Center Township Library, both had heavy traffic. One of them was not manned by a vote center tech, so when a ballot jam issue occurred, they just put the second one in service. And then at the Center Township Library, they were beginning to have some trouble. A lot of times the OVOs, when you get to high numbers of ballots, they get some paper dust and other stuff in there, and they start to be a little fussy, and so they opened that one up. All those were reported to me, and we did close all 45, and those are included in the results from election night. There were 24 other units that we set aside as spares or recovery units, should one go down in a way that we can't get results. And then freedom votes, we had all but 2 of our 694 available. There were 2 that RBM was waiting on parts to repair. We actually used 663 of them, plus the ones at absentee voting, so I believe there were about 10 or 11 left over that weren't in use on election day. Some of those were spares. There were 6 that failed on election day. While I handled a ton of calls, only about 5 of them were due to OVO issues, 12 with Freedom Vote issues, and 3 with poll pad issues. And our poll pads, we used the bulk of them. I think we had 10 left over of our 180 that were just around as spares. And that went pretty well. I did put comments in there about the fact that it has been discussed of replacing the poll pads. We do have a quote from No Ink. We've talked about replacing our current inventory plus adding some more so that we would have the ability to provide more poll pads at some of the busier sites or to, move around. But
Is that an issue that comes to this board, or does it come to
yeah,
the Board of
eventually you will have to accept the quote. My understanding is that our attorney was working to negotiate a discount in price based on some difficulties in the past that we've had with No Ink. We believe the poll pads work great. We've really had no specific issues with them, but we have had difficulty with technical support. The biggest thing was last May when it was discovered that the current poll pad application would not correctly print a ticket to open up a ballot on the Unison Freedom Vote. They supplied less than 2 weeks before absentee voting opened 165 loaner poll pads because we moved back to an earlier application that wouldn't run on our oldest 165. Of our 180, 165 were purchased in the spring of 2016 and 15 in the fall of 2016. And so the 15 that we had from the fall, those did work. So we're still using those loaners because they loan them to us indefinitely. There were issues in that cost time and obviously money, and so that's part of the negotiation and trying to get a reduction in the price. But we do have a quote for it. It was originally earmarked to try and get these in service by the municipal elections next spring to give us some, go through acceptance testing on them and make sure that they were all in place. And we were asking for more than 180. I think the number was 225, but that was part of the quote information that they supplied. In general, the poll pad is a great product, and these updates, because the poll pads are 6 years old, anybody who has an iPad or a tablet knows that at some point they age beyond the ability to use them effectively. And our oldest 165, which are now sitting on the shelf, can't go past iOS 12, and 16 is the current version. And these other ones are additionally 6 years old. And so they will hit that boundary soon. And like any other electronic device, you know, and I've been saying this since the 2020 general, when we first hit the wall with the earliest 165. Anyway, No Inc. has been reasonably responsive in this election. There were a few intermittent issues with communication with the poll pads that I think were on their end based on traffic, just from my observations of the situation. But in general, we have well used the product. It has some great benefits and works pretty well. We were also going to replace, we don't need near as, we have 165 Verizon hotspots, which we pay for every election, whether we use them or not, for the service on them. And with 42 vote centers, we don't need 165. They're also 6 years old, and so they have another product. And while we'd like to keep a few of the hotspots for our technicians because their replacement has to be plugged in and doesn't run on a battery, you know, we were talking about replacing those as well. But that was something, I think it was talked about, money put into the budget for next year and so forth.
So I guess the question is there in fact, are there funds, are there available funds in the remainder of this year's budget to sign the contract and to,
Lon is shaking her head no.
not this year?
I was just going to say he wouldn't know that answer.
Yeah, that's not my area.
I believe, and I have to confer with, well, Rita's not here, Terry or Diana Hess, that those were funds that were going to be potentially allocated for 2023. Right, but not for this year.
2020, you think
Right.
these are 2023
It was a
allocations for
discussion,
this
yeah,
purchase?
like for a
Okay.
big project.
Yeah, I can't remember off the top of my head, but we did approve the budget for this new equipment, and we wanted it to be used in 2023.
And
So
this
that's the
this is the
goal.
county council's
County council, yeah.
allocations, right?
Yes. Mhm.
Okay, so for 2023 it's likely. So we don't need to rush it this year then in terms of getting.
No, but
Well,
we,
we do need to,
I'm
the
sorry.
elections are in May.
No, I understand that, in terms of getting it done, but
Yeah.
the question is,
right, they would need to be on order right away because they have to be received, they have to be acceptance tested, and all of that has to take place
right.
before March when we're ready to start configuring them, so.
right, okay.
So, yeah, it would have to be a fairly short, the only caveat would be, since it's a municipal election, we would expect less traffic, so we wouldn't need to have as many of them necessarily.
Okay,
I'll have to check
Available
with
right
John
away.
Murphy regarding where we're at with that. But
All right,
I know
well-
we had the money set aside with sole intention that it would be here and in place to use for the 2023 election.
okay.
All right.
Well, let's make sure then that we kind of move this along, just to make sure that we can get this approved if appropriate for this year and get this process started.
I will definitely
So
remind
You
you.
can, well, I'm saying we only probably have,
Right.
maybe two more
Couple
meetings.
meetings,
Two more
right.
meetings and that's it. So if we're going to approve it, we need to do that and then get this process going forward.
Yeah, additionally on that report, there's a list of the equipment that we used, the number of voting booths, the number of, everything. Then the last part of that report is the, what I would call a ballots cast summary. It's a vote center by vote center. The number of ballots cast is reported by the flash drives from the OVOs. And then the number of check-ins is reported by the poll pads. Actually, it's in pretty good shape. We had 38 more check-ins than ballots cast, and this happens for any number of reasons. Typically, it's a voter that abandons their ballot at some point in the process or walks out with it. In some cases, we'll never know what the answer is. So there were, I believe it was 18 of them that were spot on. Same number of check-ins as ballot cast. There were another, let me see, I think I have it in here. There were 18 that were spot on, 18 that had between 1 and 5 fewer ballots processed than poll pad check-ins, for a total of 34. There were 2 that had more ballots cast than check-ins, and that is an unusual circumstance, and at this point, we don't really know exactly what happened. Some of those had ballot jam after cast reports. It could have been a replacement ballot that probably shouldn't have been made for some reason. Don't really know. Could have been a provisional that wound up being counted and not, I mean, typically it would be human error. So North Liberty had one more ballot cast than check-in, and Twin Branch had 3. If you look back at 2020 general, that number of total off was 144, and there were 8 sites that had 1 or 2 more ballots cast. So we are improving. I would say that most of these things have to do with the poll workers and the voters understanding the process. It's the process works correctly, but between training and everyone understanding how it works, I think we're getting better. In the spring, we only had 12, and that was really because there was less traffic. The higher the traffic, the more likely we are to see a few numbers like this. And in terms of traffic for this election, in 2020 general, it was 58,000 and some. I have the number in the report. This election was 50,357 or something. And so we were pretty close to 2020 general traffic, closer than at least any of us that watch it all the time would have expected. And with increased traffic means people's patience is shorter. They're not paying as close attention because they're dealing with lots of voters. And, you know, just things that happen. But that's on that report at the end. That's the equipment report.
Okay, great, thank you.
The vote center setup report, I started including that last time because we had so many issues with schools in setting up vote centers. I can say that it was much better. We had better access to schools. There were still some isolated cases of not being able to get in when we wanted to. Most of those were resolved quickly. There were only a couple of places where we did not get the space we were looking for. Jackson Middle School was one. We were supposed to have the gym and it was a hallway. The forms were pretty well done that solicit their input where they agree to be a vote center, the language and so forth. The problem was at the bottom was sort of like a couple of boxes where they were supposed to fill in the name of the space we were using and the entry door, and many of them just left it blank. And we pursued as many of them that we thought might be a possibility. I will say that in a couple of places, LaSalle and Edison, they actually gave us a better space than we had in the past after reading that. It really varies building principle by building principle. I will also say that in the future, it would be good for us to survey the sites again. They were last surveyed in 2020 general. There are some sites we're using that were never surveyed, and by surveyed I mean a kind of a map of the space prepared with a proposed layout for equipment. In 2020, those involved COVID restrictions, and so those are not the same anymore. And so there are some spaces where we could have more equipment, some spaces where it may make sense to have less equipment. At the end of that report is a ballots cast by vote center sorted by highest to lowest so that you can get an idea. It's pretty evenly distributed, but there were 5 of them that had 4% of the votes, and that means about 1,800. And then 3, 2, 1, all the way down. Our 2 newest vote centers are at the bottom of the list because nobody was aware of them. In fact, I've been asked by the League of Women Voters to make that particular information available to them because they want to try and educate voters to where some of the lesser used sites are located. I did learn that John Young receives traffic from nursing homes who bring their people there on election day to vote, and so putting more ADA machines there may be something to consider. But anyway, I think the spaces should be remapped, and it should include someone that is familiar with the equipment setup and power requirements so that we can have some good maps. We have some spaces that we do not have maps for, so our technicians just kind of go by what we generally do. This would serve 2 purposes. One, it would get the building staff involved so that we could be certain that they were aware of the space we wanted to use. I initially had trouble getting into Mishawaka High School. We did get to use their gym, or not getting into, but getting what space we were going to use. And they proposed some alternate spaces for the future, which our technicians kind of looked at, but they need to be looked over with a better eye.
Who would do this, this survey typically?
That's the question. I think Nick did the ones in 2020 general and primary because we had so few sites. I would say that myself or one of our staff should be involved in it, only because we kind of know what works and doesn't work. VR has been involved with them in the past, or at least in setting them up. But we would have to know for, certain. And this would have to happen with a good lead time before the election, because obviously all of us are busy the closer to the election we get, and would be needed, to kind of nail down.
Right. And perhaps if you could, one of our next meetings, just give us kind of a proposal as to what you would suggest and timetable and so on like that. It just needs to be a
Okay.
summary, and I think that would be
Yeah,
helpful.
and it may be that we do the ones that we used for the municipal election first, and then we go back over and get the ones for the 2024. But I really think that that needs to be done before 2024, because we're likely to see as high traffic as we did in 2020 and maybe more. And some of my staff has said that if we had better layouts with electric and so forth on them, we would know what power strips, cables, and other things to send to the site, instead of just sending generic stuff and providing stuff later. So, yeah, I will work on that.
Great, thank you.
The next one is about the Vote Center Tech program. We actually wound up with 37 Vote Center Techs, although one of them had a fever on election morning, so there were 36. So 6 of the sites were covered by myself and our staff of 8 that was working on election day. And by covered, that means they were there at opening and closing, but then as they made that their base that they returned to, but then their inspectors just called me directly. I did have about 12 that dropped out. The training costs are on there. The cost per vote center is on there. If you figure 36 vote centers, it's about, that were manned, it was about a little over $500 per vote center. I just keep looking at that to make sure that's a good investment. And we did increase the training time at the warehouse by an extra hour from 2 to 3. We were running 2.5, and 3 allowed us to get through more material. And obviously, I get a lot of feedback from Vote Center Techs, and that's part of it. But I think that in there, I thank a bunch of people. St. Mary's College, they've always worked with us really well, their Office of Civic Engagement. I did have 24 return from previous elections, and I expect that number to continue to stay strong like that, which is helpful. WNDU, they did post the information in an article that was on their online site. That was helpful. Our regular machine techs, they're always spreading the word to everybody that they know. We really could use some extra ideas about avenues to be able to recruit them from. The parties helped. Although I have to say that from just a strictly technical standpoint, because we want them to deal with the equipment, it's helpful for us if they're actually not involved in elections in St. Joe County at all, because then they tend to be more, in general, focusing on what they're supposed to do.
Right.
Also, my wife, from our training, The Greatest Wife Ever, she did a lot of sorting and putting the packets together and so forth. But so the Vote Center Tech, at least in our opinion, continues to be a pretty viable option, pretty helpful. It keeps us from having to spend time trying to train 700 people in how to start and stop the equipment and solve a ballot jam.
There seems to be plenty for the poll workers to deal with, just as it relates to processing ballots, and to have to do the technical side on top of that, I think would be a real
Yeah,
challenge.
and-
So we really appreciate what you and the
And we
teams
learned
have
that
been
in
able
the
to do.
2020 primary when we had 12 vote centers and we staffed them each with a machine technician, and the inspectors and the poll workers like, hey, we really like this. That's where it sort of came out of that.
Great.
It is a massive undertaking to recruit and train all those people. I won't kid you there. It's a difficult.
We certainly appreciate the effort and the result. So
Yeah,
thanks.
that's the Vote Center Tech, and because I talk to them and I always invite their feedback, I added a fourth report that's other issues, and we'll just kind of scan down through that. The first one I brought up was the John Drake complaint response that we had talked about at one of our last meetings. I had said that we would set aside the freedom vote that was used in that complaint and perform an audit log on it or an admin log, and I downloaded that log and reviewed it. And if you have a black and white copy, you can't see my marks in red. But basically, it says that the freedom vote ran out of paper when the ticket ahead of it was scanned. So it was a Mishawaka 5-7 ballot that was opened up. Then the poll pad, or the freedom vote says that you need to change the paper. Typically, what a poll worker will do is bring them to another freedom vote so that they're not waiting around. Anytime the paper is changed on a freedom vote, any active ballot that's open remains open. It does not cancel that ballot. And then when you scan the ticket for the next voter, and I can see that that happened, that same ballot remains open unless it's canceled. And then I can see where he canceled it, where the password was attempted twice and failed, and then the third time when his manual ballot was called up, and that would be his precinct. And that process took about 20 minutes, which is probably longer than, you want people to wait. When we train our vote center techs and anybody that is working with the freedom votes, it is you have to be very careful and be aware of what the situation is when you change the paper. If you change the paper, sometimes it prints out part of a ballot. If you change the paper, it will then print out the complete ballot. It knows where it is. It doesn't keep any records, but it knows which ballot is open. And so all of the vote center techs are taught that, and changing the paper does take time. You have to remove an access door with a key and put it back. And so it's not it may be a couple of minutes. So if the paper had been changed while the voter was waiting, as soon as the paper was changed, their ballot would have been ready to go on that machine. What I've always taught them is to look and see what happened to the voter. If the voter is no longer present, then simply cancel that ballot session because it'll be somebody else. But so the vote center techs on election day are trained to do that. But there's a lot of the absentee workers are also trained to do that, and it depends on who changes the paper and when and how busy they are, whether they even think of that. I mean, the busier they are, the more of those sort of things. So I did not see the poll pad ticket, but I would suggest that pretty much closes it for me. It was definitely that once I figured out that the paper had run out just before, that was what happened. Then I put some common voter issues because I answered a lot of phone calls about these. This cancel button that you press to cancel the ballot is always in the upper left-hand corner of every freedom vote while you're completing your ballot. Unfortunately, some people don't understand exactly what they're doing on the freedom vote, or marking and deselecting and so forth. And when they make a mistake, rather than deselecting and selecting the right candidate, they press the cancel button up in the corner, and then they say, are you sure you want to cancel your session? And they say yes, and then their ballot is now closed, and there's no way for them to vote other than you have to either find their poll pad ticket or call up a replacement ballot to open a new ballot for them. I have, since I first saw the design, have argued that button should either be hidden or reworded. It should say cancel ballot or something more dramatic than just cancel, because they think it's a way to cancel the selection they just made and so they step out of it. That's one thing. The other thing that happens is we get some of them that get to the OVO and there's no selections made. And in fact, this happened several times with a couple of people across the county. It generally involves voting a straight party ticket, and unfortunately, there's 2 long pages of instructions, and I would suggest that poll workers shouldn't encourage the voters to skip that, because I've heard them doing that. That should be on their own, whether they read those instructions or not. But the second page of the second page of those instructions is regarding a straight party ballot. And there's a lot of confusion, and I don't know if those instructions make it clear or not. But basically, anything on the freedom vote that is highlighted in green is selected, and anything that is not selected. And so if you select a straight party ticket, when you review the remaining pages of your ballot, all of the selections that would be made by that straight party ticket are now highlighted in green. This gives you the ability to change your vote in that particular race. What people do is the same kind of thing we saw in a manual ballot. They will identify straight party ticket and then go step through the ballot and mark each of the candidates they want to get a vote in that particular race. So they may have, for example, selected the Democratic straight party ticket and then marked all the Democratic choices on the ballot. On a freedom vote, unfortunately, if they tap those selections, they deselect them. And because that's the mark they made on that race, that overrides the straight party race. And so there were at least a couple of voters who did it more than once. In other words, we were on the 3rd ballot with one of them, and we were trying to get it patiently explained. If they select the straight party ticket and it's green, and then step through the screens and touch all of the green candidates, they are then deselecting all of them on the rest of the ballot, and the ballot comes up empty. When they look at their review page, again, poll workers tend to just say, just scroll to the bottom and press print. Well, you know, you don't really want to encourage them to do that. You want to have them ask, because they have a shot there to look, and it says no selection on every single one. And then when they print their ballot, if they look at it, it says no selection. And then the OVO, if there's no selection made in any race, will reject it. And then the voter is generally then given an opportunity to make a new ballot because they've marked it, you know, not according to their wishes. So that's something that I think is getting better with time, but it is something that people need to learn. That in particular is confusing. If you select a wrong candidate, you do touch them to deselect it and then select a different candidate or the same one again. But that's a process that doesn't seem to be understood by a small percentage of the voters, and that accounts for a lot of frustration.
A lot of that language is also in the statute.
Right.
So we have to go by what they say on the statute.
Right, and it is not necessarily particularly helpful. I did receive comments, and I've seen comments about privacy in the voting booth. I was at the St. Joe County Library. There was a couple who approached me after talking to the inspector because they weren't satisfied, and they were upset because scattered around the room, and the room was as big as from here to the end of that dais. But, you know, they were up the side and around the side, and people were voting at them. They said, well, they should be turned around. The difficulty with turning them around is then the power cord becomes an obstruction where it isn't. And you will have people walking behind there to bring people to another one, because you would have to, you know, sort of walk them through all of them. In general, if you're more than 5 or 6 feet away from them and directly behind them, you can't see because the screen is high enough that your body is blocking it. And obviously there's the privacy shades on the side and the contrast to the screen. I know that in several cases I've looked around the room and I can't tell exactly what they're doing. I know they're marking a ballot, but I can't read anything on any of those screens. In our particular case, there was one issue, and that was The one on the end had a power cord, and I had asked the gal to tape it down, just so that nobody would trip over it in going from there to the OVO. And the voters were interpreting that yellow piece of tape across the carpet as a place they should stand waiting for the next station. And unfortunately, that was right next to a freedom vote. And so I worked with the inspector, and we rolled a table over there, and we put some arrows on the floor and another yellow line somewhere else to suggest to voters that they stand there. They don't, you know, it's a difficult thing. I would say that in the gymnasiums, one of the ideas that one of the vote center techs offered was to put them all in a circle facing out so that all the power is on the inside, and then they're not parallel. So there's a sharper angle from freedom vote to freedom vote, so you can't look over at what the next guy's doing. I mean, if you turn them around, you can still look toward either of the adjacent ones. But anyway, fielded a number of those. I did have a couple of specifics. I can tell you that according to my vote center text, the inspector at Warren Elementary School left the space multiple times to go to their car, and was in their car for some period of time throughout the day, and was encouraging the other workers to do the same. And was, by all accounts that I've received, not very well trained. Additionally, there was the one at Hums, did not seem to know what they were doing, and is a kind of a marker for that in the envelope that was supposed to contain the results tapes and the flash drive. There were the results tape and the flash drive and all the poll pad tickets, which was quite a number, all rolled up in little balls. And then there was another one, and yeah, I'd have to think back on the name of it, that all that was in that envelope were the poll pad tickets and the flash drive. So the poll pad tickets are supposed to go in a completely separate envelope. So I would suggest that VR should think about at least those two inspectors and training.
Yeah, they were already on my list to not invite back next year, along with a couple of other ones. There was a lot of confusion. I think we fielded, like 15 calls at least of people not knowing where to put the poll pad tickets.
Right.
So I think there was a lot of confusion on that. But yeah, those two are already on my list. If you have any others, though, please feel free to provide
I'll
them.
review the notes. I know I got a lengthy email from the vote center tech at Warren giving me all kinds of specific behaviors that I tell them they're there and they've watched the training. If you see anything, let me know in case there's something we need to do. I would just for the record say that the previous group ahead of you folks were of the mind that we should come up with an inspector training class and have them go through some kind of a more than 2.5-hour session of training and be certified to work as an inspector in our election process, just as a way to resolve that. But that's pretty much the end of what I have.
Great. Thank you, Dave. So we need to step back here and go back to the certification of the final votes. And have you have processed the additional ballots that we've approved today?
Confirmed.
Okay.
6 provisionals have been added. This is the total report, I guess.
All right.
3 if you all.
Yes, if you can, well, we need one to go ahead and look over and to sign, just to certify, and then one for each of us also.
And Chuck, on the number 12, that PRE 16.
Yes.
I had voters registration run a copy of that because I was not familiar with the form itself. And that is for the inspector and the judges to fill out that information. That doesn't have anything to do with us as the board.
Yeah, I looked at that too.
it needs to be put into their certification envelopes and everything. It's to be filled out by them. So all of that information that comes from the polls or the vote centers
Right.
are in their bags and they're held for the 22 months.
Right.
But that's not for, I mean, I can
But
bring
there
you
is
the
a-
form so you
what
can
I'm
see what it
doing-
is.
What I'm doing is I'm looking at the election calendar, and it has today as a deadline as it
I know,
relates
and you said it
to
was the
that form.
PRE 16, correct?
PRE 16, that's
So
that's what they said in here, yeah.
The PRE 16 is an inspector and judge's report of
Right.
total number of votes cast on electronic voting systems in precinct vote center and number of voters who received ballot at precinct vote center as indicated by signing the poll list.
Right.
So they sign everything. There's nothing for the board to do.
Right. But it is our job to discuss and publish that according to the deadline here. So, and I think that's partly what Dave's
That's the
report
ballot cast
covers.
report,
It's the
right.
ballot cast report, where there are discrepancies between the number of folks who actually checked in and the number of folks who in fact cast ballots, and maybe people abandoning the ballots, that kind of thing. So,
Penny, did you say those were for direct? Read
No.
the title again.
No, it's just any vote, electronic. They are to record
That
the.
you said that were cast on the machines?
The inspector and judge's report of total number of votes cast on electronic voting systems in precinct/vote centers and number of voters who received ballots at the precinct vote center as indicated by signing the poll list. So it's just them writing the numbers that are on the OVOs and the numbers on the e-poll books and the poll pads.
all right. And I believe that we've complied with what we need to do, which was to discuss and publish the document. So this is a document, as is all of our documents here, this is a public document and can be obtained by anybody who wants to take a look at it. All right, so we have here a copy of the, as of today, of the final printout. Total, just a little bit of information here. The total ballots cast in this election, this includes everything that we've approved today, were 72,678. And that is a turnout rate of 36.91%. All right, I'll use my copy for approval here. Oh, thank you. Okay. All right, and then, Terry, you'll see that that's entered in the state system, or
Yes.
Penny, it's entered in the state system, all the days.
If we get done, I'll do it before I leave.
Okay, I believe we have a 3 PM deadline for that. All right. Let's go ahead and set our next meeting dates, and then we'll go ahead and hear public comment. I know a number of you have been very patient here, sitting through this.
Chuck, item 17 is being deferred, right?
That is correct. That's what we'll deal with later. Let's take a look at our calendars.
We're deferring 17, is that what you said?
That is correct. Yep. So December 2nd, I know that we were both available, although you think you were later in the afternoon, Tom, on that.
Yeah, I know, I've got some court stuff.
I think you said you were in Goshen that day.
I'm in Goshen all morning, yeah, so it'd have to be in the afternoon.
What would be a convenient time? Then we can check with
2 o'clock would be fine.
2 PM. Lana, is it be available? December 2nd. Let's set the next meeting too. just so
Yes,
we
they said
can
2.
both. Okay. Let's find another date then. Okay, we all set then for that?
Yes.
Okay. So December 2nd, 2 PM here. And then we wanted to set also, I know that we have the Election Administrators Conference that many of us are attending, and we needed to set another date for actual consideration of the
You out of town that day?
22nd. No, I can do that date. You're available that date? All right. So then also, let's check for December 22nd at, I'm available all day.
I'm open all day, too.
This is for dealing with this registration review process and procedure. Item number 17 on our agenda. We're considering it at that time.
We're both open all day. We're anticipating maybe 2 hours, Chuck?
At most.
So what time do you want her to check?
Let's do morning if we can.
10 o'clock.
Say 10 a.m.
On what date?
22nd?
22nd.
22nd?
Clint cannot do that.
Attorney's not
We do 2
available.
p.m.
Two.
Fine with us.
I have well, I can move my doctor's appointment, that's fine.
Okay. 2 p.m., all right.
Does that work, Laura?
Can't imagine anybody else
Sorry.
being in here. Can't imagine anybody else being here.
So Chuck, just to clarify, the 16th is going to be the actual hearing,
22nd.
or the 22nd?
22nd, yes. So good.
That's good.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay, we have the next two meetings scheduled, December 2nd at 2 p.m. That will be a relatively brief meeting. We're going to be talking about subpoenas that we might be needing for the hearing coming up. And then December 22nd, we will actually have a hearing on this registration review procedure. Registration procedure review. All right, let's move along to public comment. Anybody, the time is limited to 3 minutes, please, and we'll take comments on various issues.
Penny Stratton, office at 101 South Main Street in the basement of the clerk's office. I have been employed by the clerk's office for 21 years and the election clerk since the beginning of 2018. I enjoyed my job because of different aspects of it. In the spring of 2018, we implemented central count instead of sending the absentee ballots to the polling locations to ensure that the absentee ballots were handled properly and counted. In the fall of 2018, we used new voting equipment with the early walk-in voting. This was also a success, so in the spring of 2018, the new equipment was sent to all polling locations. The beginning of 2020, the St. Joseph County, in the beginning of 2020, St. Joseph County voted to become a vote center county. As with everything, there are pros and cons. Some people like the changes and some don't. The board that worked together in a bipartisan manner was comprised of Terry Rethlick, Secretary of the Board, then Rita Glenn when she took office, Catherine Finello, Democratic Chair, and Murray Wynn, the Republican Board Member, implemented every one of these changes to better the election process and to make the election safe and secure. My suggestion to this board and the clerk-elect is to take a page out of the former board's book and see what working as a bipartisan manner team can do to move our elections forward in the future. As for me, I no longer enjoy my job.
People have turned the election process into a game and a joke, and I will not work with or for people that chose to criticize the process without ever asking a question, always making assumptions, accusations, and spewing hateful and horrible lies. Because you do not know the first thing about the process, you fail to realize that every word that you said about the integrity of our elections, you were speaking of me and my job. So today will be my last day with the St. Joseph County Clerk's Office. I only hope that you take these words and work in the manner that our former board did.
Thank you, Penny. Other public comments?
Hello, my name is Cindy Strike. I live at 5808 Aberdeen Drive, South Bend, Indiana. For the past 12 years, I have been a supervisor of absentee voting. At times, it can be a thankless job, but I am here today to publicly say how much I appreciate all of the help and support from Terry, from Penny, from Lana, from Rita. You have been so knowledgeable and have helped make the election process run the way it should be run. I appreciate all of your help and support and understanding. You will really be missed, but I wish all of you the very best in whatever you do in the future. Thank you for your service. South Bend will be lost without you. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments?
I guess it's still morning, so good morning. Mike McManus, 51940 Lilac Road. First, is there a formal complaint that is directing this hearing on December 22nd? Is there something in writing that we citizens can take a look at and see what our tax dollars?
Yeah, there is a complaint in the sense of allegations that the voter registration or the undoing of a voter cancellation was not done properly. It's, these are in the form of emails, unfortunately, and so they're not reduced to the equivalency of a pleading.
Could that be possibly done, so at least we have an idea?
I think that is probably public information. I don't know why it would not be. We can provide that.
Yes, good, thank you, I appreciate that. I would simply like to say that as a fairly recent newcomer to this community, and having only in this past year gotten more and more involved with county government, I have been extraordinarily impressed by the efficiency, professionalism, expertise, and dedication to their jobs of every one of the men and women who are here as part of the election board staff. And as a taxpayer and somebody who's now very concerned about the direction of our county government, I want to thank each and every one of you, and I know I am not alone. You are very special people, and you have made, and your experience have made this county a top place to live. And I hope that we can continue doing that, and I unfortunately see that partisanship is creeping into all aspects of our government, and as the previous speaker said, that is a bad thing. And I congratulate each and every one of you. And Penny, best of luck to you. You've just been a dynamo.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Other comments?
Hello, Diana Hess, St. Joe County Democratic Party Chair. On behalf of the Democratic Party, I too want to thank the great service of Rita Glenn, Terry Rethlick, Lana Clary, Penny Stratton, and all of the members of the clerk's office who worked diligently for years without criticism until this year, did their job, were respected by members of both parties, as was mentioned by Penny in her comments. And when the attacks come after the clerk and the election workers, you're attacking everyone working the polls, everyone working absentee voting, everyone who has participated in this process to make it work for the last 50, 100 years. smoothly, you're attacking everyone, both Democratic and Republican workers, who, as Cindy Strike mentioned, it's a very thankless job, being a poll worker and being an absentee worker. A lot of our absentee workers are older citizens, and they've done the job for years. And they do it because they're available to work that many hours during absentee voting. So I hope that we do find a way to move forward with a less hateful attitude toward elections and voting integrity, because there has always been election integrity in this county. And so thank you all for your service. Best wishes, Penny. Sorry to see you go. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments?
Hello, my name is Alan Walker. I live at 57838 Oakside Avenue. I have worked multiple elections in multiple states, counties, and I've worked the election multiple times here in St. Joseph County. In 2022, I was the vote center tech at Marquette Montessori. I am here to report electioneering by the Republican judge at Marquette Montessori. I want to be clear that my issue lies not with the message that was being displayed, but with the fact that this display of partisanship was allowed. Elections must be nonpartisan. I arrived at Marquette. I noted Mike was wearing a Make America Great Again hat. I informed my inspector. The inspector asked him to remove it. He refused. I asked him myself to remove it. He refused again. I then proceeded to call and speak to county Dems, county Republicans, county board of electors, state Democrats, state Republicans, Secretary of State electoral division. It got to the point where two people who presented themselves as legal counsel for the county came and discussed the issue with me. They all had the same message. We can't deal with it today. Bring it up at the next public meeting, and that's why I'm here. Again, I'd like to stress that my issue is not with the Make America Great Again. My issue is with this display of partisanship, even though it clearly meets the definition of what electioneering is. Another large issue is Mike was not there to vote. Mike was there to work and run the election. He and his wife were the ones checking voters' ballots before depositing them into the OVO. Over a dozen voters spoke to me personally about this hat. Electioneering is defined by the 2022 Election Day Handbook as making a verbal statement or displaying a written statement indicating support or opposition to any candidate, political party, or public question appearing on the ballot. That comes from Indiana Code Title III, Article 14, Chapter 3, Section 16, which reads, electioneering means making a verbal statement, displaying a written statement, indicating support or opposition to a candidate, political party, or public question appearing on the ballot, or wearing or displaying the article of clothing that has a face on there. I want to restate this definition of electioneering. Electioneering is making a verbal statement or displaying a written statement indicating support or opposition to any candidate. Electioneering is making a verbal statement or displaying a written statement indicating support or opposition to any political party. And electioneering is making a verbal statement or displaying a written statement indicating support or opposition to any public question appearing on the ballot. The hat worn by the Republican judge meets this definition of electioneering. Make America Great Again is a statement that indicates support for the Republican Party. I know that one of the members of the council, as well as Rita Glenn, agree with this statement. Make America Great Again has been a running slogan of the Republican Party since Alexander Wiley in 1940. Barry Goldwater ran with the slogan in 1964, and Ronald Reagan used it again in 1980. Make America Great Again has historically been used as a statement of support for the Republican Party. And two, Mike was wearing a hat that had this embroidered on it, which makes it a written statement. What am I missing? Where is the disconnect in this logic? Is this purposefully written in this ambiguous way that it can be interpreted as 1, 2, and 3 or on the public ballot? Did you guys interpret it this way on purpose? I know WSBT asked you guys for comment on this on November 8th, and to quote you guys, it is only electioneering if a person is wearing or saying something that shows support or option to a current candidate or political party. I really regret finishing my time as a vote center tech. I entered an agreement with the county to trade my time and labor for you guys to use that to run a nonpartisan election. And by pigeonholing this definition of electioneering, I think you guys failed to hold up the end of your deal. Thank you for your time.
Great, thank you for your comment, and I know that that issue has come up, and we discussed it at some length. We consulted also with the Indiana Election Division. Unfortunately, the interpretation is very narrow as to what that particular definition is. That said, let me say this. The vote centers are places to which we invite the voters of St. Joseph County to come and to cast their ballots. And for a number of people, this is not a comfortable process. There's technology that they don't see very often and they don't understand. They feel this is their civic duty. They're a little anxious sometimes about not doing something right. We need to make this as welcoming and comfortable a place as we can. And this is all of our responsibilities. There are a lot of T-shirts that people could wear that may have nothing to do with politics that are really very offensive, right? We're not going to allow people to do that. So part of the problem has to do with what control we have over these individuals once they are there. I can tell you my recommendation to whoever, I didn't know whether this was a judge or whether it was a technician who in fact was wearing the hat. I think it's entirely inappropriate, but it may not be illegal. It's bad manners. It's bad.
We're lucky that there are no National Socialists or members of the Klan opening money.
Right. Well, okay, I understand. Yeah, and I don't want to get into a debate with it, but I'm just saying that we need, as a county, as a board, to make this a welcoming place. And if that means having a dress code for people who are working at the polls, and meaning just you need to dress normally, this is not a political rally, and it's also not a place where you are, need to impress anybody with inappropriate sayings, things that would kind of upset people. We don't want to do anything that interferes with people's choice to be there and choice to go ahead and make this and cast their ballots. So we do take this seriously. I don't know that we can address it exactly the way with the way the law is defined, but I do think it is very important, and I appreciate your comments and bringing this to our attention.
Can I also comment, Chuck?
Yep.
I do want to let you know that this was not something that we ignored, that we were here all throughout the day, Election Day, that complaint came in many times. We actually sent 2 of our deputized commissioners out there to try to convince the gentleman to take the hat off. But we did not feel, based on what we've been trained, and I think that Chuck and I are also going to, when we go to this conference statewide, we intend to also raise this issue again, because it does seem to be a fairly narrow definition. It does seem to leave a lot of leeway for all sorts of shirts or things like that really do have a political message to them, but they don't necessarily fall into that category. So I just want to let you know that all 3 of us took this seriously and wrestled with it, and it wasn't something that we just said, to heck with that, let's not deal with it. We tried to deal with it the best that we could, all 3 of us did, and all 3 of us felt that it was an inappropriate thing for the guy to be wearing, but we weren't sure that we had the authority to make him take it off, and that's something that we're going to continue looking into. So I also appreciate your comments.
Thank you. Are there any other comments?
Yes.
Oh, yes, sir.
Hello, my name is Spencer Pitt. I am a first-time voter in the election. I live at 815 North Main Street, Apartment A, Mishawaka. And I come here to voice concerns about what the previous gentleman mentioned up here about this election judge, who the board seems to interpret as not having met the narrow definition of electioneering. However, I would like to bring up that as of November 15th, this Donald Trump has officially filed for the presidency. And this has been the candidate affiliated. The candidate has a joint fundraising representative that has been collecting donations since 2021. However, that is not the main portion of my complaint. The main portion of my complaint is that the Make America Great Again hat is sufficiently affiliated with multiple Republican candidates, multiple federal Republican candidates, such as Lauren Boebert and Marjorie Taylor Greene. Now, even though they are not in our state, because they are federal candidates, I had a discussion with the Indiana Election Division. They do qualify as they do qualify as being candidates according to the Indiana Code 314-316. And I want to reiterate that even though the narrow definition may not have been met as it relates to Donald Trump, it has been made as it relates to these candidates, as well as our current Attorney General, Todd Rokita, who the Vanderburgh County clerk in the 2018 Republican Senate primary determined that the Make America Great Again hat was in other likeness of Todd Rokita, and as a currently elected official, this could be interpreted as supporting Todd Rokita, which would be illegal. And I filed a complaint, but then I also have an addendum to that complaint. I have 3 copies if after this any of you want to have them. But thank you for your time. And I do appreciate all you have done in keeping our elections safe, free, and fair. And yeah.
Great, thank you. Other comments?
Josh Osmond, 66354 State Road 331 in Wyatt. There were a number of comments made about the need for bipartisanship in our elections and ensuring that they are done in a free and fair way. And those calls came, from my understanding, from one side of the aisle, and I want to reiterate those from the other side of the aisle. I've been a machine technician in this county since the primary election of 2014, and all through that time, our elections were absolutely top-notch, secure through and through, and it was because of the bipartisan way that the machine tech crew is handled, the bipartisanship way the clerk's office is handled. It's all phenomenal. So I want to reiterate from the Republican side that we need to continue in this bipartisan fashion. We need to stop the fighting, we need to stop the accusations, we need to stop the squabbling and recognize that we are here to work for the good of the voters of St. Joe County. The clerk's office, Penny, Lana, Rita, Terry, they've been great at this. They were absolutely marvelous at this. And I want to see that kind of work continue moving forward. I've been very proud of the work that I've done. I intend to keep on doing it, but I want to see this done wherever. Let's just get along. Can't we all just get along? Isn't that the expression? And we can. This county has proven that we can get along. This county has proven that we can get beyond partisanship. We can all be friends. Lana, we're going to go have that taco date at some point in time. It doesn't matter. Penny, I wish you the best of luck with moving forward. Terry, it was great working with you. If Rita were here, I'd say the same thing to her. They are all dear friends of mine, and I want to see us continue forward in that same kind of fashion.
Thank you. Any other comments?
My name is Marla Godet. My address is 55705 Szechuan Drive, Osceola, Indiana. I am just speaking, and thank you, sir. I don't have any partisanship. I think it should all go away. I am new to this, and I don't even know what half of it means half the time, because I think people should just do their job. Just do your job, count the votes however they're supposed to be counted. I had a lot of questions during this election because I was involved in it. But as a write-in candidate, I didn't understand any of this because I didn't know how you can write votes and then not know, like the workers were not aware of how it was supposed to work. And so I called, and people were telling me that, well, no, you know, we don't really do that a lot, and well, maybe they don't know, and it was almost like a blow-off. And I said, okay, well, we'll figure it out next time. All right. So I eventually went to the Secretary of State and a website, and the training really wasn't there. So people, when they're saying that they didn't know, they probably didn't, because the training really isn't there, because it isn't a process that's done often. So people can't be held accountable for what they don't know. So my suggestion is that we do spend more time in this area and with the independent party and libertarian parties, because we're not bipartisan. We are nonpartisan. We are so many things in America, and that's where we need to be, because we're not black and white. We're not black, white, Asian, and Latino. We're all things. We're biracial. We're so many things. We are multiple people when it comes to these affiliations. And so we're going to have to get used to that. And I'm asking, just like I'm going to ask the Election Committee and the new Secretary of State, that the Election Commission and the new Secretary of State and the League of Women Voters and everybody else I can ask, is that we do some deeper dives into these trainings, and that we consider these different parties and independents and write-ins, because as you can see throughout the nation, many people have won elections because of write-ins. Many people are doing it. We had 6 qualified write-in candidates for Senate in our state this year. And my concern today is that I know approximately 78 people who voted for Hanifa Khalik in this county, and the votes aren't there. I didn't hear her having any votes here, and that's telling me that maybe my vote didn't count. And that's sad to me, because I voted for her. We gathered hundreds of people this year who had never voted, 52-year-old men who said, I'll trust you. I don't trust this system, I'll trust you, and I'm gonna get out of my bed and vote. My sister-in-law came with her oxygen tank and voted. She had not voted since Obama. She voted and was highly upset that she couldn't figure it out. A lot of people didn't understand the machine. People coming out of incarceration who had been told, you can't vote, and they found out they could, and the pride that they felt. And now they're like, what do you mean Hanifa didn't get any votes? I voted for her. Oh, see, Marla, you're a liar. I'm not ever doing it again. We can't have this, you all. We cannot have this. There are people who are finally taking time to trust, and now you say, what do you mean Hanifa didn't get any votes? I voted for her. I wrote the HK. I did it. What do you mean you only got these amount of votes? We voted for you. We did this. Oh, we're not coming back. We got to fix this. We got to fix this. There's an article in US Today that says 40% of Americans do not want the Democrat and Republican system. So if they feel like they can get up and vote for something different, they will. But if we're going to say, oh, independent, no, that's libertarian. This is what someone got told. Just vote libertarian and then go back and change what you want. This is what a poll worker told a first-time male voter, 46 years old. He's like, I don't know what that is. I don't know what that means. Wait, hold on. And then they walked away. This is illegal. First of all, you can't tell people who to vote for. And then he didn't know what to do. And so the frustration, so we can't assume that all these people just automatically know how to vote. So I'm asking that we take time to think deeper to not just our everyday hit a straight party ticket voter, not just our everyday Democrat, Republican, not just our people who have been voting for years and years and years. We have a lot of older people who are voting now who've never done it before, and I want to keep it that way. I want to keep them engaged. We have people who are telling me they're going to vote in the primary. They're going to vote this spring. They're going to try it one more time. We can't lose them. St. Joe County is in a momentum, not a movement, a momentum that we want to keep a constant. Movements die out. We want to keep this a constant. And I'm here for everybody. I don't care about nobody's party. I'm like this dude. I want to eat and drink with everybody. So let's do this. And everyone who helped me and my irritating emails and messages was all great. They answered me. They were fantastic. I don't know anybody, so I have no issue with anybody. So I hope that everyone who comes on new is just as welcoming and just as inviting as I learn these processes, and people that I bring to you learn these processes, because they gotta learn and they gotta feel welcomed to learn. The people who are on the polls working, if they're frustrated because they don't know, they're gonna frustrate other people, and then those people won't come back again. And I'm telling you, my sister-in-law right now came with her oxygen, and to say Hanifa Khalif has 0, it's a lot of people really upset.
There was 16, by the way. She got 16 votes.
Yeah, well, I'm telling you how many I know for a fact came, so.
All right, thanks.
I get it, I get it. So somehow those votes don't count for whatever reason, signatures don't match this and that. Again, these are rules and stuff that I don't know all the rules. So.
A lot of
Thanks
it-
for your comments.
Yeah, a lot of it has to do with the fact that they may have written them in the wrong election, since we had that special election and the regular election. A lot of it has to do with that.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Yes, I have a comment. If there's no other public comment.
Terry?
It has been my privilege to work for the citizens of St. Joseph County for 42 years. I was fortunate to have been elected as county recorder and county clerk during those years. My first experience in politics was as a grade schooler, hanging campaign material on doors for the Penn Township trustee candidate. I helped countless other candidates and served as a poll worker and an inspector for many years after I turned the age of 18. Back then, politics were different, and although Democrats and Republican candidates disagreed, they were always civil to each other and ran on their platform, not on a campaign of hateful ads and blog postings. Unfortunately, this is no longer the case. Some candidates do not run on their qualifications and plans for the office they seek. Instead, they run a dirty campaign of outright lies and disgusting advertisements. They seek to destroy the person they are running against, or in this case, this year's county clerk, who was not even running for the office. This was the campaign run by the clerk-elect, Amy Rolfes. They ripped the heart and soul out of a person who had never done anything to hurt them. I have never, in all my years, seen a political campaign as hateful, evil, and filled with false accusations as was run by her and the Republican Party and her campaign staff. The so-called party of those with Christian faith. I certainly did not see any Christian behavior from the clerk-elect and her surfboard committee. It is time to go back to civility and manners in politics and leave evil where it belongs, in hell. This will not be the legacy of County Clerk Rita Glenn.
The people that know her, worked with her, and love her know she did nothing wrong and was the best damn clerk St. Joseph County has ever had.
Thank you, Terry. Any other public comments? Seeing none, may I have a motion that we be adjourned?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Penny, I have your certified copy.
You need these, Penny?
That's fine, we'll put it in the minutes.
Is that the same as, I know that you wrote along, I think I have a copy of the email. Oh, to our record? Yeah, okay. I can do it.
Okay.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you, sir, for working,
Oh.
and I'm sorry that.
Accepted scanned ballots, so I can just put them in the ballot downstairs in the tubs when I go.
This also.
This is, I need to go
Military.
to this person and say that they were accepted.
Yep.
So that's gonna go to that, so I gotta go to those people. These were the rejected. Let me go stop the recording real quick.
That's right, we're gonna go out and drink and have.
Okay,
fun.
okay.